That's it. What'd you think of lunch? Pretty decent, right?
You found a nice little honey hole there at a driving range to have that good of wings. Let's be serious.
Like, why is it that good at a golf? Why is it that good at a golf course?
There's a reason no one's swinging outside.
Yeah. Why is it that good at a golf course? It's the best wings in town, hands down. Period. End of story.
I'm not usually a dry rub guy, but it made me a believer. I had boba tea for the first time in a long ever.
Yeah, what'd you think?
I liked it. It's different, I guess, as opposed to like the ones that come in the bottles. That is like those tapioca bubbles that are just like inedible. This was in New York. It's Brooklyn. It's legit, right? Come on.
Kind of love it or hate it type of deal, right?
I feel like if you're paying $12, you're not going to tell people you hated it.
That's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point. Well, hey, ladies and gentlemen, in the studio today, we have Chet Nielsen, former CIA case officer for 10 years. Mm-hmm. You are a licensed attorney in the state of Massachusetts, and you're the COO of Modular Labs, which is an AI incubation studio or incubator studio.
Right. We help. We either work with people that are creating AI tools for software, and then help bring them up in house as well.
And so let's set the stage. So you and I go back a ways, right? We met in Afghanistan in Kabul. Let's kind of set the stage there, right? Like, how do you
13 years ago?
It was a minute. It was a minute ago, right? Before we get into the origin story, let's set the stage, because I remember vividly our first interaction, and it was a good one, right? I would love to hear it from your standpoint. Like you said, we talked about at lunch, like walking into the team room. And
well, I remember the first time I met you all was I didn't know what I was doing, and my call sign at the time was Madison. And because I'm from Wisconsin and went to UW. And the team came up to pick me for my first meeting, and I was just standing on the steps at the hotel, and the car was just sitting there, and I'm like, is this me? I don't know the handshake or whatever. And we were there for 6 or 7 minutes. And then I go, are you guys driving me? They're like, no, I think we've got this cute girl that we're supposed to take. And I'm like, what? And they go, Madison. And I was like, I might have picked the wrong name. So I instead of being a kid from Wisconsin, I was, a girl from Alexandria that was 24 years old, working in the war zone. So that's how I first met. But the team room was great, and got to know you guys really, really well. It was amazing knowing that the best part of working with you guys, not in conjunction but with, right, was when I knew I'd made it when I'd go into the team room and everyone always yells the word door, right, which meant watch your mouth, there's somebody coming in. And then I walked in one day and you guys didn't do it. So I felt like I was part of the team a little bit in my own way.
Dude, yeah, 100%. And there was definitely, and we talked about it over lunch, right? There was such, so many scare tactics and I would say false, you really had to, everyone was so scared to get fired. Yeah. On the contractor side, I'm speaking, you know what I mean? Man, if I blink twice the wrong way, I'm just going to get shit canned. And some guys just never got over that. And I think it had a negative impact on the relationships, right?
Well, yeah. And then you have, in the early days of Afghanistan as case officers, it was people that were interested in going, right? I came into the agency after I was in college when 9/11 happened, and I was trying to figure out how I was going to serve, and it was going to be possibly going into the Marine Corps, and I was told by many Marines I didn't meet muster, so I wanted to go in the agency and found my way to it. But we'll get to that eventually. But what was interesting in the early years of the war, you had a lot of first and second tour officers, young officers, hungry, ready to go, right? And then once that town pool kind of dried up and people were a little bit, burnt out, there was a dearth of people willing to raise their hand and go. And so they made it part of the promotion criteria. One of the best ways to get anyone in the government to do something is say you can't get promoted without it. And so you started getting people that were coming from Munich or coming from Kyoto or coming from Johannesburg. People that didn't really care, but they also weren't going in for the war, right?
Sure.
They're going for promotion. And those are the people that you ran into that were like, hey, you don't talk to me like this. You don't know who I am, right? They came from more of like lack of a better term, like a bourgeois class of case officer.
Without a doubt, right? There was, and man, I think so. Sometimes people ask me, "Hey, what was your most rewarding, or what did you take away from?" And I think for me, one of the most rewarding things was kind of breaking that mold, at least having an individual effort. And when I was remotely in charge, right, everyone was just pretending, right? We have leadership billets, right? Was fostering that kind of changing of the guard, where it's like, hey, we can educate these guys and gals, they can educate us, right? Like, Afghanistan, Iraq, the war zones are just kind of one small, like there is an entire globe and larger agency that we have no idea in our little kind of ecosphere here, right? Is that fair to say?
That is. I mean, one of the things that GRS and what you guys brought to the table that was lacking in our organization is, by the time I had gotten to Afghanistan, the joke was we hadn't been there for 12 years. We had been there for 12 one-year tours, right? So it turns out that GRS was, in fact, kind of the institutional knowledge. And so having to re-educate, it's like I felt like you guys were kind of like a great band that had to keep playing the hits every time new case officers came in, right?
That's a good way to put it.
Where it's just like, hey, listen, I'll show you what a surveillance detection route looks like here. Like, I'll show you what safe looks like, talk about the route and stuff like that. And you guys were so effective at what you did that some case officers took it a little easy, right? Like some people did not become, as area familiar or take the chances because we had your exceptional support. So, yeah, you guys were a linchpin of institutional knowledge and area familiarization for sure.
And that's and we you have guys that are there for so long, right? I need my GPS to go 2 towns away from where I'm at right now, but I know I could still drive Kabul blindfolded.
I know where Chicken Street is.
Right, yeah, right. But it was very, very rewarding once we, like I said, kind of change, I'll call it our team room atmosphere, because the relationships just became so much more effective, and you got much more a sense of mission accomplishment when it wasn't just like, hey, shut up and get in the back, or vice versa from like your guys' side, like, hey, you guys are doing this or whatever, you guys might be driving, but I'm fucking in charge, right? Or whatever, right? So you were a large part of that. Like I said, I remember our first interactions being very, very all of our interactions being positive. But yeah, I remember when you came in for the first time, and I can only imagine what they told you guys about us, which I'd love to hear. It's always entertaining. And then there's obviously what we thought, kind of baseline about you guys, right? And so you immediately came in and broke that mold as far as I'm concerned, not just because you're sitting here, but I could tell that you had some ass on you as far as, hey man, I'm going to be involved and let's do this together. And that was a much, much needed change from kind of the culture that I had experienced.
Yeah, one of the things the agency looks for in its recruitment process are individuals who are autodidacts, right? Individuals who can teach themselves what they need to know, right? Later in my career, when I was in Africa, I was doing counterterrorism, but also counter proliferation because of the uranium mines, and there was human trafficking, and we had the equivalent of like pretty much 56K dial-up out in the middle of the Sahel Desert. So you had to just figure it out on your own. And so even today, when I'm helping young CEOs, when I was a consultant and telling people like, you can learn it, right? You can learn it, but it's faster if you just learn from somebody. You don't have to reinvent the wheel every time, right?
Right. And
so coming into the team room, why would I teach myself everything I need to know and have a high likelihood of getting it wrong? Like in those situations in Afghanistan, on-the-job training, like if you make a mistake, you might not have a chance to learn from it.
Yeah, right?
You might just be dead.
Yeah.
So having you guys to show everything and show interest, because case officers, and this just goes for any sort of human interaction, right? If you're not showing concerted interest in what somebody's talking about or what they're doing, you've rendered them irrelevant, and you can never go to that well, right? So it's, in a way, it's, social manipulation. It's also just what they taught us how to be nice in Wisconsin, right? Like,
Sure, right.
my mom would slap me if I treated anyone differently than the way I treated you or the way you treated me.
It's 100%. And as those relationships fostered, right? Like, and this came much later in my career when I was working more in an instructor role, and we had case officers, invaluable case officers, kind of making sure we didn't wander off path too, right? Because one thing that became abundantly clear was the agency is so in its operations, it's so geographically and kind of space and area dependent that what is law, and how things are done in a certain way in this space could be completely, irrelevant, wrong, and not practiced in another, right? And so having those relationships with the case officers in an instructor role where I'd be like, hey man, I have a question and I want from your optic. Like my optic is this, and I think that 2 + 2 = 4. And more oftentimes than not, those case officers would be like, I can see why you think that, but on our side of the fence, this is what this means, and 2 + 2 = 5. Well, that only had to happen a couple times before I was like, okay, I apparently don't know shit. And my first, my first initial
Let's open that aperture a little bit,
right? Yeah, like, hey, teach me, tell me, like, educate me on why my initial thought process is wrong. And those relationships were invaluable. And what I always used to say to them was like, hey man, what do you think about this? And then, hey, what do you think? I'm like, not now, bro. Don't CO me now. Like, this is me and you talking. Turn it off for a second, Oh,
God, don't CO me. I haven't heard that term in a long time.
Don't case officer me right now.
No, I mean, one of the things that was really great, especially because, it was such a relationship-based relationship, was when I left Afghanistan and went to Pakistan, right? They share a border. There's a lot of cross-culture, like the Pashtuns are on both sides. But everyone always was like, hey, we still had GRS-assisted operations when I was working in Karachi. We just didn't have them on location like we did in Kabul. And so we'd get these guys coming in from Iraq or Afghanistan, and they know it's arguably as dangerous or maybe even more dangerous because there's no U.S. mil presence, and there's 26 million people in Karachi. And they'd come in, and we'd want to do surveillance detection routes, right, SDRs. But they'd come from a war zone where you're trying to make sure you don't get blown up. Like, is Lashkar-e-Taiba with you or whomever, right? But then we'd come to Karachi, and it's like, well, we still have that terrorist threat, but we also have ISI and the national police, and so we can't be as provocative in our surveillance detection routes. And so it's still a war zone, but it's completely different.
Right.
And it's like, here we can carry guns, here we can't, but they're equally dangerous. And so learning and iterating and having these games of, I mean, how many times did you sit down and play the game of, like, I still do it today, the what the if game?
Yep. Yes.
What the if has helped my career, and it's helped a lot of the CEOs that I've worked with. Of there's a very high likelihood that when you're out on the street in the middle of the night doing something you shouldn't be doing, for which you can either get arrested or worse, you're going to run into a problem you've never handled before. But that doesn't mean it's not the first time you haven't thought of it, right? And so we sit down before an op or something, we sit down for 45 minutes and just have people pepper you. What if you run out of gas, right?
Yep.
What if there's a roadblock? What if you forgot the cash? What if comms go out? What if? Because something's going to happen. Murphy's going to pop up. And so even in business, right? What if Trump comes up with Liberation Day in March and April, and M&A activity slows down and money's expensive, or you have you're on Coldplay, the Coldplay, like Jumbotron, right?
Yeah,
Kristen
right.
Cavett,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like, all these things are PR disasters. But if you think about it, you don't have to have a plan for it. But planning isn't necessarily having something in order. Planning is just having not have the experience be the first time you are thinking about it, right?
1,000%, right? And that was something that came out a lot with the and it's the two different cultures, right? And I think it's like two things can be true at the same time, or you can both meet the same objective but go about it two different ways, right? So in the military with that R2P2, like rapid, when I say R2P2, like basically rapid response planning. Hey, this kicked off, you have this much time to plan it, and then there's such a militant and like execution style checklist where if you complete it, everything else is kind of we'll fight our way out of it.
Right.
You know what I
right.
mean? Like, but if I get that checklist, and so when a mill guy develops a plan and then presents that plan, any amount of like I would call it rat fucking, or you'd say what ifing, you almost like, whether it's operational maturity or whatever, you're like, hold on a minute, you know what I mean? Like it's almost you take it as a slight to where you guys, it was like that was welcomed.
Right.
Like, hey, please tell me something that I haven't thought of. Like rat fuck this to death.
Seatbelts is a great like small thing that comes to mind immediately. In Afghanistan, we didn't wear seatbelts, right? Like, first of all, we're in an armored vehicle, so we're going to win. In a collision, we win. But if you're going to dismount, you got to get going quickly. In Pakistan, we wore seatbelts all the time. Religiously, because we were in thin-skinned cars, and the biggest threat at that point was checkpoints with police who were going to try and shake you down for money.
Yep.
And so they would grab you and pull you out of the car if they saw you were an American. And that seatbelt gave you an extra second to stay in the car and run through the possibilities of what your iteration is. So it's amazing how, like, when we would rat fuck it, like, it came down to, it's like, is this a seatbelt or no seatbelt thing? And I know you can get drowned in the minutia, but a lot of stuff we were doing, we're playing for keeps. Like, I was declared to that country, but still doing things nonetheless.
And for the audience sake, when you say declared.
Yeah. There's two really kind of ways to look at agency operations. So I was under what was called the Department of Operations, and then the NCS, the National Clandestine Service. I think it's back to the DO again. Anyway, there's a lot of name changes. Case officers go over in kind of three distinct roles. They're either fully integrated into the State Department, where like they get a paycheck from the State Department. They are a State Department officer, and then they just have a night job, right? And then you've got kind of more declared officers who I work out of like the embassy, but I'm on a list, and the country knows I'm with the CIA, right? Because I'm going to go meet with their head of intelligence or share document exchanges, right? And so I'm declared to them because I got to work with them every day. And then you have this kind of gray area, which kind of was where Kabul was, where I worked out of the embassy, and I had a cover at that time, I think as a political officer or something like that. But I was on a presence list, so they knew I was agency. But while I was in the embassy, just for bookkeeping, I still had a cover of sorts. The difference between like the embassy and the hotel, right?
Yep, tracking.
Yeah. So so that's being declared to these countries means that, well, one of the benefits was I could roll my cover back, right? And that's why I can say now that I'm agency. And in fact, I think I'm not allowed to say I was State Department, even though it's all over my Facebook at the time to list my cover. Right? They go and cross-pollinate. But because all the countries I went to, I was declared, that meant that there were no equities lost, right? Like, if Chester says he was in the CIA and I was under like a more integrated cover, that would blow it up. And it would, when I say blow it up, it means that they could find the position I was in and then see every officer who came into that position after me, and they could daisy chain our presence based on that slot. And so since I didn't have to worry about, that's why I can say I'm agency after all these years.
That's well, thank you for explaining that. That's one of the other aspects too. Like, once again, like, you think like when I got done with my tours there in Afghanistan, and predominantly in Kabul, a little bit of time in Israel and so on and so forth. And once again, like you just get that snapshot of how the organization works in those environments. And then once you kind of get exposed, you much more than me, it's very, very eye-opening and almost like, it's almost like we're starting over. And I told at lunch, I was like, man, I was in for 12, 13 years before I realized I really don't have any fucking idea what's going on around. You know what I mean? Like, in the grand scheme of things.
It's kind of like, someone asked me like how, I like to speak through analogy. You know this. I talk a lot and I talk in analogies. But every country we go into, it's kind of like playing chess in a dark room, okay? Like a blacked out room with a single light bulb, and it sways.
You're right.
Okay? So every couple seconds you get a little look at the board and you can move, but you never know. You're playing chess in the dark except for a swing. And then as you get longer and longer, the pendulum stops swinging as much, and you get more light, and it elucidates. It all of a sudden the board becomes a little bit more clear.
Sure.
But it's when it's swaying, and you have to move, and you're on the clock, and you're moving one in the dark because you don't know what you're doing is right or wrong. But yeah, that's why, again, going back to one of the best things that y'all did was when I showed up, you took me out, taught me how to self-drive, told me what to look for, taught me how to commentary drive. Probably saved my skin more often when I was doing my self-drives of saying out loud. Commentary driving really quickly is when I'm driving, I will speak out loud what I am seeing. Mm-hmm. Okay? So I'll be driving, I'm like, oh, hey, look, that person's probably, they're on their phone, they're probably going to cut into my lane. And then they do, right?
Yep.
And when I say that, I'll hear it, and then that is it's an affirmation portion, right? It's an associative memory. So I say it, and then I hear it, and I can't dismiss it. Mm-hmm. As opposed to how many times have you done it where it's like you're thinking about something, you don't react, and then it happens, right? So you taught me how to commentary drive so that you're like, hey, you know what? I turned on the street. I'm like, this street is a lot quieter than it normally is at 4 o'clock. If I don't say that out, I'll keep driving.
Right.
But if I say it out, I'm like, whoa, okay, you know what? I'm getting a couple of goosebumps here, but like, back it up, turn. You know the streets well enough, just, parallel it and come back, right? And that was really, really instrumental. I mean, it's those little things that you all taught us that, those buses say keep your arms inside the window because some kid doesn't have an arm. I don't want to be that car. Right. The second mouse gets the cheese.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, and you win every fight you don't get into, right? You know what I'm saying? You spend an inordinate amount of time in, conflict avoidance, right?
Oh
And that's, that was also obviously a big, kind of a shift, from the mill guys, getting into that space, like that collection space.
You're not movement to contact, right?
Right. It's like, wait a minute, what? Hey, asshole, the objective is to not be seen or caught here.
Right. And it's so funny, like, that's the thing Caroline, my wife, has tried to get me to watch a bunch of agency shows and movies, and I'll get about like 4 minutes in, and I'm just like, this is just not how it's done, right? And it's not because it's bad, but the idea is our life is so boring that it wouldn't make for good movies, right?
Sure.
Like if I were a case officer and I was in Afghanistan and I got hemmed up 3 times and had to like blow through a checkpoint, I'm being sent home, right? I'm not being promoted and sent back out because I'm forward leaning, right? So the idea is if you don't get caught, your job is to do bad things and not get caught.
1,000%.
And so it's just one where it's like, it is so mind-numbing, but the stakes are so high, right? And so that's where they get it wrong of like, you don't carry guns. I never carried a knife or a gun or anything because at that point, shit has gone so sideways that one, I can't make my meeting. I can't get the intel. I can't give it to the president or the Senate or whatever department needs it that day or that week or whatever. Like I have failed my job if anyone knows what I'm doing. And so kind of like blending in and becoming the gray man. Mm-hmm. And that goes from everything from like my demeanor to my kit, right? So if I'm going to be walking around, like I'm not going to have a North Face bag on, right? Because if I have North Face, that's an American. Now I'm 6'1", I was 225. Like I'm already seeing it. So like that's where like, well, I mean, your kit that you guys make is amazing, but like having just not so low profile as to draw attention to yourself, but enough where it's just like, you're just the gray man, right?
Right, and it's we had a hard time with that. That was a hard lesson learned. And tell me if you agree or can attest to this. Like, there's a story that one of the guys told about and I reference this. Like, I did some low profile work in D.C. Mm-hmm. Right, and it was for a 3-letter agency. It was contract work, so I was moonlighting. And the first day on the job, if you will, like. We were basically foot mobile surveillance on a couple key targets, mm-hmm. and basically looking for potential enemy surveillance. Sure. Right. And the minute I stepped off of the train, I can't like the blue line or whatever where I got off, like, and this is shame on me because I had the whole ride to where I should have kind of figured this out. But as soon as the doors open. And I stepped out. I'm in like a skull cap, a leather jacket. I mean, I look like a Marine. Right. And it's 5:30 in the morning in downtown D.C. Mm-hmm. I don't blend.
Do you know why you guys also didn't blend? What do they call it? The 30-inch step? right?
Yeah.
You guys have such a precise. You could always tell when Mill were trying to not be Mill because you're pacing. If I looked at who
Right.
like a group like that one walks like he's been in formation.
Yeah, 100%.
100%.
Yeah, 100%. And it's so like I immediately went to, men's, not big and tall or whatever, but like I had to drastically change and wear clothes that I was, for a time theoretically uncomfortable with.
Right.
Right. And so when you go overseas, you have to take that time, right? And I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but it's like I can't wear a 5'11" tuxedo because I'm comfy in it.
Right.
I've got to have the pointy shoes and the skinny jeans and the whatever God knows else is in style there, right?
Maybe some affliction shirt.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah. And it's that, that mix of seeing out and seeing in and knowing how you're perceived all the way to, like you said, the how you carry yourself.
Right.
Are you upright and alert and that's right? I mean, am I on
100%.
point?
I mean, I still remember when I came in, I was dating this girl, wonderful woman, and she had to put up with me growing a two-fisted beard, right? I was in Pashto language school at the Foreign Service Institute learning the language for 9 months full-time. And then eventually went overseas, and I got off the bird, and I got picked up by my boss, and he goes, "What the fuck is on your face?" I go, "My beard." He goes, "Who the fuck do you think you're meeting with? Like, Mullah Omar isn't coming in today, okay? Like, you're meeting with politicians. We need you to figure out what's happening inside the palace. So shave your face
You need to
because
look
you're
like a
supposed.
statesman.
You got to look like a diplomat. This is not a diplomat. You are too high profile." And then you get the ones that want to wear like a shalwar kameez, and it's like, first of all, you're 6'2" and you're healthy. You don't look
Right.
Afghan, right? So so sometimes playing the part is putting on the identity. It's all perception management, right? That's the term.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that's really important about it is if you can take that off your plate. One of the things that we talk about a lot is like, especially with the what the ifs, is it's called like a cognitive load is the term that we use for it.
I'm tracking.
So cognitive load is like there's only so much water in the well from which you can draw as you think through things, right? For instance, when you're going through the subway, one of the things that they teach you is I don't know if you ever got off at like DuPont Circle, right?
Oh, sure.
Right? But like you get out of the train and you have to know which way the escalator is. Because if you get out and you think that it's on the left, you turn left and you counterflow against everybody else that knew it was right, that's where surveillance is, and that's provocative. And
Right
now
off
they're going
the
to ping
bat.
you
Yep.
off the bat.
Right off the
So
bat.
you're even thinking before you get out, you're like, I don't want to be the first person. I don't want to be the last person because I don't want them to rush out after me or jump out at the end of the train. I have to know where I'm going. There are so many things that are going through of like like eye control, foot control, pacing, making sure that you are highlighted enough so that surveillance can see you because you want to bring them into another area where you can identify them and you want to stay with you without highlighting them. And so that takes a lot of cognitive load.
Yes.
So if I can just dress appropriately and take that off of like, I don't fit in, because one of the things we used to do is I live in Boston now and I had to do some stuff in Boston for training. And if you are in Back Bay or Southie or Dorchester or up in Cambridge, they all wear different clothes.
Mm-hmm.
So what I would do on my SDRs is I would move from one spot and go to another spot. And if you're wearing a suit and you are in Dorchester, you don't fit in.
Right.
Surveillance. I got you, right? And so when we're trying to figure out how to use outfits even, right, and we can use that offensively and defensively during our surveillance detection routes.
Yeah, for sure. And that takes that's a great segue into the training, and I want to talk about the training because I think it's important. But like, take me all the way back to the beginning. You grew up in Wisconsin, correct?
Yeah. Dairy Country, Wisconsin is a small town north of Milwaukee, and then I went to University of St. Thomas up in Minnesota, go Tommies, and then went to University of Wisconsin where I finished out, and then I moved to Montana and worked as a ranch hand for my aunt had a small 75 acre ranch out there. And that worked out great. She was interviewed during my background investigation. Quick side story: during a white elephant for Christmas, when I worked on the Hill, you could fly flags and give them out as gifts, right? You paid $20, whatever it was. And so she came to Christmas, and during the white elephant, she won the flag, right? And then when the FBI came for my background, they're like, ma'am, do you think that your nephew is could you call him a patriot? She goes, he gave me an American flag for Christmas. They're like, all right, we'll move on. We're good.
We're good. Yeah, he's good. Yeah.
So I worked out there, and my dad had given me some really great advice between college and my first job. He's like, take a year and do 3 jobs that you are either going to be too broken, too married, too many kids, bad back, not enough money, and do them now, right? Not just like an experiential year, but like get some real life experience.
That's pretty sound advice.
Right. So I worked there, and then I had a chance. I was going to work as a long line fisherman out of Boston, but the survival suits were like $3,000. I couldn't afford it. So eventually, once I graduated and I was done wrangling and trying my hand at team roping, I got on a presidential campaign in 2004. In Minnesota as a district coordinator up in the north, and then from there made my way onto Capitol Hill. And this was all the plan to try and get as close to the government as I could because I wanted to join the agency, but they don't have a recruitment station everywhere.
Okay.
So I wanted to find my way to get into the government and get noticed. And then I eventually made my way to be one of the senior legislative assistants for the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, Jim Sensenbrenner at the time. And then from there, made my way into the recruitment process. Worked for a company called SAIC in the interim as a management consultant, and then got recruited and was brought in and went down to the farm and then started my career, which was Afghanistan, Pakistan, Jordan, Turkey, and then I finished up as a chief of base running some operations in West Africa.
Sick, dude. Well, so the first question that comes to my mind, right? I'm always super curious is, at what point in your life did the agency kind of come into the purview? You know what I mean? Like I can remember being very, super young, and obviously movies have a lot to do with it, right? It's always movies, right? Like I wanted to join the military because I saw Rambo when I was 5 years old, right? And whatever. So like, what was I'm sure you remember, like, what led you or who led you kind of down that path? Always
James Bond movies. Loved it.
Right?
Loved it. It was hilarious. It's interesting where, excuse me. Oh, that spicy water. It's interesting when people ask about my background and they hear that I was in the agency and they go, were you former military? Right? The common conception is that is the normal path.
Sure.
So wrong.
Correct. Right.
They want people that can talk. They want people that can interact. And please don't take this the wrong way, but like, we're not a drum line, we're a jazz group, right? Like a lot of it is like, it's all commander's intent. It's not like a lot of orders. Like go out there and just figure it out on your own. And you get that in the military, as I understand it, like eventually, but for those first couple of years, right? It's kind of like, do what you're told, get in line. And so, so going in from Congress into, and then consulting into the agency was the path that we went, which was great. Yeah.
What was it like on the Hill? I've always been intrigued by, it's almost like I don't even know what or where to ask. You know what I mean? Like
right.
What was that like working in that environment in a nutshell?
Cyclical, and that's why I didn't like it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when I worked for a guy named Tim Petri from Wisconsin at first, and then with Jim later on, you would get done with like, you're seeing it right now with the government shutdown. Like there's a continuing resolution that's on the floor right now, right? To start getting the government back open and the funding flowing again from Congress. And then there will be at some point some success. And then in 3 more months, there's going to be the same problem. And it's going to be the same players, and it's over and over. It's another continuing resolution. It's like, oh, we need to fund the transportation for the roads this year. Well, guess what? After you're done, start working on next year's. It's the same stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you have people that are exceptionally good at it, right? People that are in for life, and then you have people like me who kind of come in to kind of get their bearing, get some experience, and then catapult that into different areas of the government or lobbying, right?
Sure.
So it's fun. The government is run by a bunch of 25-year-olds, 26-year-olds, right? That just like the Marine Corps, right? Where you have a congressman who's got a lot of things to do. She has to spend her time in meetings, and so all of the day-to-day operational work is done by her staff, who is 23 years old, and so there's a very easy slippery slope of confusing proximity to power with your own power, right?
Right.
So anyone that's been on the Hill will love. I hope will love this. Like, I remember that every time I tried to get a date with a girl that was on the Hill, she'd always ask the same 3 questions, and so too with the guys. Like, who do you work for? What issues do you handle? And what committees are they on? Right? It wasn't like, what do you play baseball? Do you whatever? It's like, no, how important are you?
Yeah,
are
how
you
much
worth
juice?
my time?
Right. How much juice do you have?
Right. So it was an unbelievable experience. And it was the first time I had, really gotten into like service back to my country, right? Helping, especially not being on the Senate side, which handles the whole state. Jim's purview was about Milwaukee, and Tim was up near the Fond du Lac, Green Bay area. And so you really just have these small people that you're helping get like an on-ramp so that they can get to work faster, right? Or making sure that their SNAP benefits get there, or when their Social Security runs out, or I lost my DD-214, I need VA benefits. Like, we handle all that. So it's really hands-on helping people. And
Interesting.
Probably the closest thing to true service I had, where it was one-to-one corollary of hard work to individual benefit.
That's incredible. That's interesting to hear, because obviously, from having never done it, I would say like my optic is like it's just a self-licking ice cream cone that's has 2 sides to it, and it's very like a snake pit. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's, like, call me cynical after whatever, but yeah.
Stereotypes exist for a reason. They save some time sometimes,
right? Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, at what point of your time on the Hill, like, what was the bridge into recruitment? Was there a certain event, or did you run into somebody in particular, or how did that work?
I was able to find somebody. I applied, but I didn't have to go through the retail process because I was handling intelligence issues for Jim, and so I had some contacts that were able to at least float my resume to initial consideration. And then after that, it was the lengthy process of the interviews and the polys, the psych exams, they made us in the old days take Wonderlic intelligence exams.
Yep.
The story on that, which is kind of fun, is for case officers, it's a myth maybe, but they put a limit on how intelligent you could be, right?
Really?
Like, if you score too high, you might be too much of a nerd to not be able to interact with people.
Yeah, right, yeah.
So when I took it, I didn't know it was timed. So I was taking my sweet time with it. And then like 3 minutes left, and I was on like question 4 of 50.
Oh, shit.
So I was found to be unintelligent enough to be trusted with the job as a national security asset, right?
Sure, right. That's incredible. Yeah, I failed mine 3 times. They're like, hey, dude, you got to change your answers here.
Right. I know you're copying on, but...
Yeah, you got to change your answers, They're like, you're answering this too truthfully. I was like, I don't, obviously a very different, recruitment process or application process, but because I didn't have a plan B, which I'd be interested to hear if you did.
I didn't.
No plan, just Hail Mary, let's do this.
Kind of. So with all things, I think this is what you're doing with Nomadic and what you did before. Even with this podcast and everything you're doing, I'm very decisive, but that's after a period of almost like self-reflection. So I remember the day I submitted my packet for consideration, and it was a year to the day I decided I wanted to do it. And the way I thought about it, like, this is going to be a lifestyle change, right? It's going to be taking me in ways I don't know where I'm going to go, who I'm going to talk to. So on that day, I was like, if you're still interested if you're this excited a year from now, do it.
Mm-hmm.
Don't make a huge life decision on a fleeting idea. Right?
Sure.
So, so I remember that whole year I did it. And then once I got in, I came on as a PT, which is a professional trainee. They have two kind of avenues. You have CSTs, which are clandestine service trainees. They're usually older, more experienced, like usually between like 27 to 30 years old. And when I came in, I was much younger. And so they make you wait, kind of like take to the bit and learn to not be. They can't send a 25-year-old out to the field and meet with maybe like a general, right? Like, what are you going to fucking do with this? So I stayed in headquarters for a while and then went down to a couple training iterations and then the farm, and then to language and out.
No kidding. And if you can, right,
Yeah.
if you can talk, like, there was obviously the movie that was playing in your head, right? The movie that's kind of plays in all of our heads in some way, shape, or form, right? Or variation. Right. And then you kind of get there and you get behind the curtain. And I'll speak for myself where there was definitely times where I was like, oh, this is exactly like the movie that was playing in my head. And then there's other times where I'm like, are you fucking serious right now? Like, what are we doing here? Like, this is bananas, and not necessarily in a good way.
Right.
Like, what were some of those instances for you where, I don't want to say like the bubble was burst, but sometimes the bubble gets a little burst, and then other times you're like, oh, this is exactly what I envisioned.
A couple things. I noticed, we do not have a physical standard, right? You don't have to meet a certain physical fitness ability. You need to be able to walk for several miles for your surveillance detection. But like when I walked in, I'm like, wait, am I in the wrong room, right? So that was fun. Like, I still remember going through like M4 qualifications, and there was a woman. She was what's a good word for it? Corpulent.
Corpulent. That's right. It's a fantastic word.
And
rotund.
Yeah. But it's not to make fun of her. It's the fact that if you remember, we had those really shitty plates that we had to wear, like the big ones, right?
Just Michelin Man plates. They were awful.
Oh, God. But we had to go through our rifle qual, and you stand, then kneeling, sitting, and then prone.
Mm-hmm.
But she was so large that when she tried to get her sight picture, the roll on her neck was hitting the plate, and she couldn't shoot, and she went out. So, like, I don't want to dispel the rumors, but like, she served in the war.
It takes all types, for sure.
It does. But no, like a couple things that I thought were like highs and lows. I still remember going through, we call it crash bang, where you learn how to drive and you learn how to shoot.
Mm-hmm.
And we had all these. In one iteration, you're driving at night in the woods, and you have in the old days they just had a piece of cardboard that they put in front of you, and you would just drive there like turn right, turn left, and then they would just pull it away, and you would be confronted with a roadblock, people holding guns, and then you have to do it. So I was like, oh my God, this is exactly what I showed up for. Another one was like they had 9 cars, all beaters. We were on the track down at the farm, and we were all numbered, and there were 9, and we had to do close-in driving. We're like, all right, car 5, switch with car 9, right? And you're banging in or you're doing it around, and that was really effective to see how tight you drive in Kabul. I mean, you're counterflowing, and you are tight on people. Then there's the other side. I remember one time I had to go back to Afghanistan on a tourist passport because the people that were supposed to handle my diplomatic passport, somebody brought in a sheet cake for their cat who turned 4, and that cat had like a name that's an adjective for a cloud, like Fluffy, Whitey, something like that. Yes. So they're like, I'm sorry. I'm like, well, I'm leaving in like 3 days. And they're like, well, I go, all right. So in the end, we are, that's when I realized we're kind of like lions led by donkeys in some ways, right?
Sometimes, right?
Sometimes. But in the end, it was everything I would have wanted it to be. And I'm glad that, like, when I hung up the cleats, there were just nubs left on them, and I'm happy to move on. And now that I'm an attorney and I do other things, but the high points, especially now that I've been out for like 10 years, right? Like I can wax philosophic. Like all the good times are the ones that float up now. But yeah.
Yeah, you don't remember, right? You don't remember the mind-numbing, like I said, like, what the fuck is going on? Like, I always, like, if you're, and I know you are, and for the audience's sake, like, is it Comedy Central? Is it Archer? Is it like...
Right.
So there's Archer, the Office.
Right.
And then Jason Bourne, the no shit movies. And
right.
And they're all true in certain aspects, right?
Yes. I have been in a car chase from police in a foreign country.
Right. Many times.
But on the flip side of that, I still remember when, I don't know who the team was with me, but I had to meet somebody, and having Dagan yogurt in Kabul, like for a local to have it, was like a sign of like wealth, and like they have a luxury good, but they didn't have steady power.
Right.
So they bring it out, and it's totally curdled. But I have to eat it because I'm with the senior official, and if I don't, it's really insulting. And so I couldn't drink Pepsi for a year after that because I had a Pepsi with me, and I would take a bite of it, and I would want to throw up, and I would drink the Pepsi. And then I got back in the car after the meeting, and I'm trying to remember because I didn't take, we don't take notes, right? It's got to be up here in case you get caught.
Mm-hmm.
And so I needed to throw up, and I forgot who we were driving, but it was somebody new. It's like, you can't break the seal. And I'm like, do you want me to puke in the back of this car? Like, that is another option. And so like sitting through bad yogurt and being sick for a couple days was more of like the farcical side of it, but something to deal with, yeah.
There's so much comedy, dude, and like we'll go down the comedy road, like so much unadulterated comedy that goes on, right? Behind the scenes, right?
Uh-huh.
Like I said, that's why the Archer reference is there. Like, I've lost track. There was more comedy than there was anything else, right? I don't know, right? Is that fair?
Yeah, a lot of gallows humor, but yeah. But like, one of my friends served in Thailand, and it was during the monsoon season, and he would do SCRs, and a lot of the cisterns would get filled up with like debris, right? And so there's nowhere for this water to go, and it was just fetid. And his wife made him jump into, there was next to where they lived, the house had a pool. And so when he'd come back after these SCRs smelling that bad, he had to jump in the pool to let the chlorine before she would let him back in the house, right? Like,
don't stink up the joint.
Yeah, I was like, oh yeah, that's not provocative that you were out working like when you have to jump. Did he jump in the lake today? Yeah, okay, he was operating, right? Like, yeah,
Sure. Well, going back to training, what was the most challenging aspect for you going through the training down there at the farm? Because it's 9 months or at the time, ish, right?
There's 2 iterations.
Fairly high attrition rate, like lots of washout.
Very high.
Mm-hmm.
I think the hardest part was, especially at that age, was in the start of the scenario, you do a lot like diplomatic functions, and you're trying to meet a specific individual, and you have a role player against whom you try and extract information, right? And I know what I need to get. Let's say I need to get a negotiation strategy for an upcoming summit, and this person has access to it. Like, I'd be like, hi, I'm Chester. He's like, hi, like, I'm Tim. I'd be like, hi, Tim, like, I need this, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to, I was like, no, you need to work this individual for like 6 months, and then you can get it, right? The idea of slowing things down.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
Not to make a shooting reference, but like slow is smooth and smooth is fast, right?
Yeah.
So like working to be like truly manipulate, and I'm not good at manipulation, right? I really have to think it out and then hope that it comes up, or like create a situation where I can use the manipulative technique I want to use. But that was really hard I need this information now, but I can't ask it.
Right.
And I need to be non-alerting and finding a way for someone to like me who shouldn't like me.
Mm-hmm.
Really quickly, an agency thing that a lot of people just don't get, and especially the movies don't get. Let's talk about cover for a second, right? Everyone's like, oh, your cover is to keep you protected. No. I mean, yes, in a way, but really what it is it gives you access.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So if I am in a country and I am in the political section, I'm a State Department officer, and that doesn't make me safe, right? If I'm in Afghanistan, they'll shoot me just as happy knowing or not knowing I'm agency.
1,000%, right.
But I can use that position to then make a phone call and get the meetings I need to get to start that developmental process, right? So when you're thinking about that kind of cover and how to learn to be a diplomat and then how to slow roll things, and the agency recruits a lot of people who are hard drivers and who are solution oriented, right? I think people have asked, like, what is your key like strength or whatever? And it's that I don't think I've ever, that's hyperbole. 90% of the time, I've given my boss a solution to a problem they presented to me. It might not be one that they like, but I find a way to get them the maximum of what they need or what they've requested. But knowing to do that slowly and gently, right? And a lot of it is just like dating and getting to know people and moving a relationship forward.
Courting process, so to speak.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
So that was the hardest part of ratcheting it in and learning the process and trusting the process.
Was there an aspect of it, and I always find this interesting, right? Because it doesn't matter what training or what school, whether it be basic or advanced, right? And you kind of get through that training and then you show up for realsies, and it's in a lot of that stuff kind of, I don't want to say goes out the window, but it's did you feel yourself, in your opinion, that the schoolhouse training there at the farm prepared you well for that first war zone tour?
War zone, not necessarily, right? It's a different animal. Because in those situations, especially with the politicians I was meeting, and I was declared, and so I could take this meeting and just be like, by the way, like I do this, but I also do this. And I'm talking to you because I think you might be able to provide information to the United States government that would assist both of our countries. And so it's a radically different animal. I remember stupidly using something from the schoolhouse, which was like, if you're trying to be innocuous, you want a second meeting, and let's say we talked about a good book, right, that I had read and you had brought interest in. Let's say, whatever book that might be. At the end of the conversation, I'm like, hey, by the way, great to meet you. Tell you what, why don't we get together? I've got that book. I'll bring it over for you. Why don't we get together? I've got a copy. It'll take 2 seconds, right? And that's a natural thing to do. I brought that up in my first meeting in Afghanistan, and the person sitting across goes, I would hope we'd have more important things to talk about than a book.
Oh, no shit, right?
And
You're
I was like,
oops.
Okay, yep, all right, learn on the job. But again, and I'm sure you got this from your Marine Corps training, the agency really pounded into us the idea that you cannot be afraid to fail because you're going to. You just have to be unwilling to fail the same way twice.
Right, yes,
right?
yes.
And that's why you're not considered a full performance case officer until you have 2-3 tours with multiple recruitments against multiple targets and multiple areas of responsibility against different and increasingly difficult surveillance, host nation surveillance capacities, right? So, I wasn't, even when I left, I had a lot of tours, but I was not a full performer. I would not consider myself full performance, even though I served in 4 different continents, over the course of 7 years.
Yeah, yes, yeah. And you bring up such a good point where that's from the military side of things, right? And I'll talk about our training. Like I showed up to Kabul after selection, which was roughly 30 days. I had a 2-week. We actually had 2 kind of selections. Stop me if you know this. Like one of them was a 2-week, very rigid assessment and selection where I think there was 24 of us and 3 of us passed or whatever, right?
Wow.
Meanie faces with the clipboard, very limited information, just kind of scenario based. Hey, let's see what you come up with, right? What is all your years of military training, right? Like we're not here to teach you anything. They were very upfront about that. Like we're here to assess your abilities, right? So stressful to say the least, right? Shooting for your job. And then there was the 30-dayer where it was a little bit more educational based. There was still standards to be met, but it was much more gentlemanly and like, hey, check it out, dude. Like, this is what it's going to be like when you get to X, Y, and Z, right? But even, and I'm not saying anything bad about the instructors, anything like that. Like, it just, there was such, like, I felt like when I got to Afghanistan, I was like, okay, I'm here. I don't really know what the fuck we're supposed to be doing here. It was so OJT, on the job training, right?
Yeah,
like,
right.
Massive OJT, right? So you had to click up with, and hopefully you had a good mentor, know?
Right.
And then that was the world, right? Like, and we saw that all the time where, and I'm sure you did too, to your point, like, man, I may have Afghanistan down pat. Right, and how to be successful here, right? And then I go over to Iraq or Yemen or where have you, and it couldn't be more apples and oranges, right? Like much drastic changes in TTPs or techniques, tactics, and procedures.
100%. I even think about the fact of like, if there's kind of a drawbridge mentality too. I've seen like in Afghanistan when I showed up and I had asked people that were successful, like, how'd you do it? They're like, it's the magic, right?
He's kind of
fuck off directly,
safeguarding.
right? And it's like, no, like I still remember when I was trying to recruit somebody and the number was very low that we were going to pay, right? I don't think there was a comma in it per month, okay? And so my boss, who was my mentor, calls me in. He's like, all right, you're going to pitch him tonight? I'm like, yeah. He goes, I saw what headquarters approved for the payment. It's pretty low. And we had another issue with the fact that there was such a huge USG presence in Afghanistan. I think at the time we were there, the U.S. government constituted 98% of Afghanistan's GDP. Right?
Oh, that 100%.
Because like they were building roads for the bases, they were working on our staff, they were driving, like they were doing the chow hall stuff. Like we employed everybody, and so with that came U.S. money. So when USAID is giving people like thousands of dollars a month, and I come in with this lowball number, but he goes, all right, so let's just say the number was like $800 or something like that, right? He's like, well, you can say it's $800, but he's not going to like that. So why don't you say he can make almost $10,000 a year? Make him do the math, but then move on quickly. Don't let him focus on the number. 10,000 sounds like a lot of money. And then when he leaves and he's agreed, you can talk about that during the next meeting, right? And have a little bit more time. But it's like those were the tips and tricks of the trade of, hey, listen, they're nervous. I was nervous for my first pitch, right? You're going to have this entire pitch ready to go, and the joke we always said is like, you can take 9 hours to come up with the 900 or the 90 questions, and then it takes 9 seconds after the meeting to think of the 900 you forgot. Right. So, but yeah, so like those TTPs, what worked over in Afghanistan was totally different in Pakistan, right? Pakistanis are exceptional negotiators, and they've been around the block, and they know what they're doing. They're extremely sophisticated. And going from even for the TTPs, I was under the impression that I was under omnipresent physical and technical surveillance, right, when I was driving around living off the compound. And so, but I still had to drive with an offensive mindset, but bring in, it's against a extremely capable internal service. So I had to bring in more like the kind of training you would get if you were going to go to, say, like Havana, or you're going to go to Turkey, or you're going to go to Russia or stuff like that. So it was weird to feel like you're in the same country, but you have to operate 100% differently.
Yeah, and that is, it's so epiphal when you come to that realization, right? Like where there just is no 2 + 2 = 4 answer. You know what I mean? Like everything plays a variable in it, right? And then I think one of the hardest things, going back to my instructor time with the kind of expansion of what I would call the traditional GRS role in things was, hey man, we're not talking about getting blown up anymore. To get Iraq, Afghanistan, and the war zones out of your mind. This is
hard to reboot.
Very hard to reboot, right? And because we're all products of our environment, right? And one of the biggest things, and I know you know all about this, was we took a lot from the assessment of where the personality traits come into play.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because if you're a military guy and you kind of have your SOPs ingrained, if this happens, I do this and X, Y, and Z, right? Moreover, with those personality traits, that was very eye-opening to me. Like, okay, we don't have a 2 + 2 = 4 answer here. We need these personality traits to make sure that they can be successful most of the time.
I saw a guy that was in he was an intel officer for the DOD, and he had gone through surveillance training. And when you create a site, let's say you're going to do like a brief encounter. A BE is where I don't need to talk to you. I don't do a full like pick you up, take you to a hotel, debrief you for hours. I need 3 minutes, right? I might need to hand you something. You might need to like tell me something quickly, or maybe it's just a cash pass because whatever, right? And so we'd have to come up with these sites where you have cover, concealment, flow, and when we would come up with these site casing reports, you would have like, this is the general area, this is the route, and you draw these maps and you would teach your asset. But I would be like, all right, so I want you to start from like the Stop and Shop, go up like a block, take a right, you'll see an alley on your left, cut through there, I need you there at 12:02 p.m. Then I saw a casing report that the DOD uses, and it's like, you are going to start at MGRS grid cord this.
Right.
You will walk 97 feet and then bear 13 degrees. And like it is linear. It was a 2+2. I'm like, that's not how the world works. And it's one where, like, especially when you're dealing with people that are very afraid to be working with you, right? There's always that nervousness. If I get caught overseas, I'm going to get, we call it PNG, persona non grata. I get kicked out of the country.
Yeah.
They get killed. So the stakes are pretty high. And so when you're dealing with somebody and they're that psychological situation, you have to think of their mind like a bookshelf, right? Where I give them a bunch of information, but if I give them one piece of information too much, the first book on the right falls off.
Ah, interesting,
right?
interesting.
So if I can just walk you through the major muscle movements, right? Then we can figure this out. But I don't want to be like, on this putt, make sure to exhale, hold your breath. Like when you shoot, right? Yeah, you want to get it between heartbeats and you want to have like your natural resting point of your breath. But to start, I want you to put it down there and get it as close as you can.
Yeah,
we'll dial it in later.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're just never going to take the shot. You're going to forget that it's like, am I right? So yeah, when it comes down to like that personality for the agency, it comes down to people that can kind of distill things down and then work with the person and know the person across. More of what I did was psychology and understanding the person across from me than it was doing anything that they show in the movies, right? It's boring. I told you I don't have a 1,000-yard stare. I've got a 1,000-word per minute stare, right?
You
Like
said
I'm a monkey, a computer monkey.
There's a lot of typing involved, right?
Yeah, oh my God.
There's so much that goes on behind the scenes, right? And that was another eye-opening experience for me where, and I think you even mentioned it, where it's like, hey man, we're, mission's done, high fives, everybody's got no more holes in them than they were born with. Let's go have a beer, and you've got hours of work, after the fact. And so it was very educational for me, those initial experiences. And it really, if you take the time to understand what you guys do, right? Because in the GRS space, especially when I showed up, it was, I don't want to say it was hostile, but it was like,
Yeah.
And I did not accept that, right? I was like, these are human beings. 2, they're all bringing something to the table, or otherwise they wouldn't be here. They may not look like us, talk like but there's a reason for that, right? There's a reason, because who am I hiding from? Nobody. You know what I mean? I blend in nowhere.
Right.
Right?
And really quick, like another misconception about the agency is like assimilation of cultures, right? Like, yes, you should wear like, if you're a woman and you are in, let's say, Dubai, right, and you want to go into a mosque, you cover your shoulders, right? You're not, first of all, you won't be let in if you don't, but you do that, and no one's going to confuse you if you're like, a former basketball player, like in college, and you say you're a 6-foot-tall woman, like in that area, they're not. But it's not about assimilation; it's about understanding, right? So. I don't know if you've been to, like, for instance, and this all goes to not highlighting yourself. If I'm in Italy, right, I don't get a cappuccino after 2. Now, that's not because I am affectatious or anything like that. It's just they don't do it at all. So if you have a cappuccino after 2, you're not Italian. Any possible assumption that you are not an American has been right out the way, right?
Right off the bat.
And so, like, another one of them is like, I'm always checking my watch, right? But eventually I got to the point where when I'm in a country and like, if there's 5 calls to prayer, I've got a good idea if it's Maspahin or whatever, right? And so you assimilate to like, hey, listen, Ramadan's coming up. So I can expect intel to come down. I'm not going to call. Like they're going to be tired during the day. Like wait till Eid. So it's not like you're trying to be a spy by disguising like them. You're becoming a spy by understanding who they are and working around that to your advantage.
Right. Yeah. It makes 100%. It makes and like I said, that was, we were talking about it at lunch. That was some of the most educational benefits of being because in that environment, right? It's not like we had a ton of operational time together, but we didn't have a ton of like one-on-one sit down, because there's no time.
There's no time.
Right. But being on the instructor cadre, man, I used to wear those guys out.
Right.
Like I was a 6-year-old and they were my dad. Like, why is water wet? You know what I mean? Like I would just wet. You know what I mean? Like I would just wear those guys out because I was so intrigued at the level of introspect and the basically, techniques and psychology of observation. Like if you're not able to, open, like you said, open up that bandwidth or that exposure, that aperture, and take all of those things in, those cultural aspects, right? Versus, where's the target? What time are we at the target? And everybody dies.
There was a younger recruit, and I asked her where she wanted to go. She goes, "Well, I speak Mandarin. I want to go to China." I was like, "Why would you go to China with Mandarin?" She looks at me like I got a third eye, and most people do, right? It seems like a very logical idea. It's like, no. You want to go to like Sao Paulo, right? You want to go to Caracas. You want to go to Jayburg, or maybe even like, I don't know, like Canberra. You want to go somewhere where they're foreign. So if you have like a second secretary Chinese embassy official and they're in Rio, they don't have a lot of people to talk to.
Right. Yep.
So if you bump into them at a bar and you're like, sure, right?
Instant
like,
rapport, right.
And all of a sudden they're like, I have an outlet. And so you become that other island in the stream for them, right? And that's how you can begin the developmental process. Whereas if you go to the country where there's a billion people that these people can speak to, then you're not playing the odds, right? And so even that kind of assimilation, you can use that, again, offensively and defensively against some cultures. I'm not going to say it because I don't want to get in trouble, but some cultures are not as, they like the way they do it, and they do it that way. Like, for instance, let's be serious. Anyone that's been overseas can spot an American because they probably have a sweatshirt with the local university they love all over, right? They're wearing that. But like, if you want to use an inability to assimilate offensively, that's when you start becoming good at whatever that person does, and that person can't find another outlet, like language.
And you had said you said earlier in the interview that you weren't a full performer. You didn't consider yourself a full performer, right? And that's I'm sure you're being modest, right? Like I'm sure I
would say based on the metrics, I was not.
Right. Well, at what point did you find like there's always that certain point, and I'm sure it's each tour or each country, each region that you operated in, like is going to have its own. Like, at what point did you feel like the training wheels were off and you had found your stride? Like you really felt like, okay, I'm on a good pace here. I know exactly what's going on. Like I feel like I got this down pat.
For Area Fam, it would always be the moment I remembered when I thought I was lost, and then I would be like, oh no, I remember I was lost here last week. Take a right.
Yeah.
Okay. And so when I would do Area Fam, I would drive and just walk around to get lost. And in some countries, you have to do a surveillance detection route to make sure you're not being covered before you do Area Fam, because when you start sharking streets and going back and forth, it's provocative.
It's provocative.
So like before you can learn it, you have to do a surveillance detection route that is highly tailored, and you can't make wrong turns, and it could be 2, 3, 4 hours depending on the country. And to be able to learn the streets that you're supposed to be driving on. Very counterintuitive, right? So that happened. And then I would also say when things started, I wouldn't say when things started slowing down, but when my mind worked at the pace of business.
Like you said, that cognitive load kind of.
Right. That's a great way to circle back to that. Yeah. So when, like, for instance, in the Sahel, you have the Tuareg and the Tubus, right? And those are two different tribes, and they've been at war at the time, 2015, they were at war quite a bit. And so, I'm stepping on my own dick here. Like when I'm talking to them, I'm like, so you guys hang out very much? And they're like,
like, hey, bro,
we're on the team together, but like, no. And so you're going to make those mistakes. And for a lot of these places, when I would go to like on a short notice TDY, like there's just not time to get up to speed, right? You are going in there blind.
And TDY is
temporary duty, yeah, as opposed to a PCS, which is a permanent change of station.
One's short, one's very long.
Exactly.
Right.
And usually it's specific mission or task driven, right? As opposed to I'll be in a country for 2 years and work against any number of targets. I'm here because I need to do this thing. The specific thing, when it's done, I rip out. So yeah, when I would go like to Africa, I didn't speak French, right? they didn't have time to give it to me, and even then it was only a short tour. So being able to work through that and knowing who to call and getting everything right. And so when I would get there, I would start drilling down and become very myopic, right? And starting to learn the P's and the Q's, like trying to learn to type on a keyboard that's laid out differently, right?
Kind of eat the sandwich one bite at a time, right?
Exactly. But then eventually, when it becomes second nature, I don't realize it, and I can feel my capacity grow, then I feel like I've got the fundamentals. People always like, a thing I would always say to my team is like, if you have what you think is a dumb question, ask. Because it probably relates to a fundamental necessity that you need to know. You think it's dumb because it's a basic. So let's make sure we got that down. And so I would be asking dumb questions until I realized I wasn't asking dumb questions anymore.
Yeah. For sure. I get it. And that's once again, like coming from like the two different cultures, like, man, I'll ask. I'm not afraid to be like, I'm the dumbest guy in the room. Like, I'm going to ask. I'm not going to not ask the questions, right? I don't care if it's dumb or not, because if it's coming across my ticker tape with a question mark, not saying I haven't thought about it, you know what I mean? But like, I have just never been that guy. I'm like, I'll ask. I'll ask a question.
I've got the worst luck. If I don't ask, it will come up
It'll
that
happen.
day, and I will not know what I'm going to do, and then you're on the next bird home, right?
For sure.
So, yeah.
For sure. Well, I have to ask this because we were both intimately involved. The Afghanistan withdrawal.
Yeah. That was heartbreaking. That was rough.
From your optic, right? I don't think, like, and I said this on an episode or two ago, like, I don't think anyone could give me a reason that would justify, there isn't a reason that could be given to me that I'd be like, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
What is your take on it?
This is a rather indelicate thing, but it's a story from a Marine, so take it for what it was. Actually, I'm not going to use that story. It would be way too unprofessional. But there's a bear in a beehive kind of thing. But there was I don't see how we could have withdrawn at any time.
Right.
And not had this happen. That doesn't mean that the way it transpired and the deaths that occurred weren't at least moderately or fully avoidable, right? The Taliban knew what they were doing. Remember, they were always confused by a lot of people and case officers and GRs alike that they were terrorists, and they weren't, right? They were a disaffected political group. Remember that the passports it was the Taliban who gave you passports in the 90s, right? They're government entities, so they were going to come back at some point. But just because you're about to have the cave-in occur doesn't mean that you can't do it with what would be a semblance of a modicum of thought, right?
Right.
I am not so sure that someone didn't wake up and be like, you know what? We need a policy change. We're out of Afghanistan, right? Like, we've already spent how much money there? And like, yeah, we have the domestic things. The Onion, I don't know if you ever see The Onion, the newspaper.
Oh, sure.
One of my favorite articles was like, Detroit wants to know what it needs to do to be invaded by U.S. military for schools, roads, and hospitals, right? So, but I thought it was just, if it was conceived and thought of, it was ill-conceived. And there are too many smart people that are working in the government, especially in the upper echelons of the DOD, for this to be well thought out. It's heartbreaking.
It kept me up. It kept me up for weeks. It was, and that we're talking about the memes, right? The comedy, like the memes kept coming up where I can't remember the name of the two actors, but they're basically getting ready to be, and the gallows, they're getting ready to be hung. And it's like, first time, huh? You know what I mean? And I felt like with like the Vietnam vets or whatever, it was inconceivable to me that there was any, like you said, logic, thought, strategic, anything. Like, it's just like they hit a light switch. And after that long and that much blood, sweat, and treasure, you know what I mean? I don't know that I'll ever get over it.
Yeah. This might come out wrong, but I don't take that position on it because the reason I was there was bin Laden.
Mm-hmm.
And then, unlike you, where you spent a lot of time there, right? I spent a year and then went back again for a short time to fix some things that broke when I left. I moved on, right? And started doing other things, and other things drew my attention. And so I didn't have this, and I lived a very comfortable life. Like, you know what it was like at the end. Like the roughest day was we ran out of Perrier, right?
Yeah, which was, those were dark days.
Oh, my dark days. That and 9/11, never again.
God damn it, yeah.
Right, but so it's one where it's like, I was there for a purpose. I was there for a mission. I completed it. I extracted from it what I needed and moved on. But in my mind, maybe one of the reasons it's like that is being that tied into like the Wollasey Jirga is their Congress, right? And getting into the politics and the policy and reading the intelligence, and you just think to yourself like, it's going to fall at some point. Right. So like I didn't get invested in it. But that's not like, as opposed to like all those Marines that were in like in Helmand and in Kandahar and getting shot and killed, like that is horrible. But I didn't have that experience. Right.
Right.
And I wasn't there for years. So in me, I was just like, the inevitable happened.
Sure.
But it was so catastrophically done poorly. I would just say it is a travesty and it's unacceptable what happened.
Yeah. And to your point, I can remember when I first showed up there, maybe it was 2 weeks, maybe it was a month. And I can distinctly remember standing on the patio and kind of just, because I thought the country itself was beautiful. Like I thought, it was very...
I'll get up to Mazar-e Sharif. It was amazing.
Right. Like I was very enchanted. Like as long as you kept, I would tell people, as long as you kind of look horizon and up, it's gorgeous. It's when you look down where you're like, oh, fuck, this place is a mess, right? But whether it was 2 weeks or a month, I can remember distinctly thinking like, because I had not been there in the military, I was only there in the intelligence community. We are either going to be here for the rest of existence, or we should leave right now.
Right. And
I think we had been there for roughly 10 years at that point, right? And that was, once again, that was my initial thoughts. And still, after 4.5, 5 years, ballpark, when I was down on the instructor cadre and it started to unfold, and of course we had people there,
like it was a horror
and
show.
The cables are flying and whatever, and it's like, what in the fuck are you? What is
this
happening?
could not have
right
now?
Now?
Well thought out,
right?
Like,
Right.
Why? And it's a great point of Saigon. I read the last cable that came out of Saigon, and it just talks about like it's a never again. It was about the treasure and all this, and this is how we're ending in the famous photo, with the helicopter.
Sure.
You think, and that was because the enemy was at the door. This one was of a time and place of our choosing, and this is what we chose.
And that's what we came up with?
And I mean, the fact that like the jets, it's not the Titanic where like there weren't enough lifeboats, right? It kind of was. Like we could not have enough 130s to take care of everyone at the CAC, right? All the people that were falling off, like you can't get everyone out. Everyone that wanted to get out got out earlier. And it's just, I think the thing that is heartbreaking is, for me, separate from that, is like, yeah, it was devastating that we left. But now that we went from like that like flow tide, and now it's ebbing back with like all the rights of the women being taken away and girls going back to not being in school. And all the things that we were fighting for, like the fact that probably the Jingle Boys are back, right? The Bacha Bozi, the 5-year-old boy toys, the Hazara, are probably in a world of hurt.
Yeah.
And so, not to be too coy, but do you remember like when it started getting cold and it would get cloudy?
Yeah.
Right?
And the ash. And
do you remember what that ash was from? During the summertime, Afghans would defecate on their, they'd poop on their roof and let it dry. And then they would burn it in the winter for heat. That's why if you were at Eggers, you got like, 10% disability on your lungs, right?
Yeah.
We got nothing because we're civilian. But I was like, this is a group of people who are so hardened and so poor that they burn their own shit for heat.
Right.
Right? Like, what are we bringing to this table?
Mm-hmm.
I still remember when I went out to the hinterlands and I was talking to a tribal elder. I was like, what do you think about, what is it in Pashto? I forgot the name for president. Goodness. Not just Karzai, but the name that, but anyway, I asked him, like, what do you think about the president? I go, who's the president?
Yeah, no clue what you're talking about.
No idea.
Yeah.
They got technology through cell phones. So they have instant communication and in a lot of ways are living a very like medieval lifestyle with communication. So I don't even know, like, no one really knew why we got there. We just kind of got mired and then someone goes like, fuck it.
Yeah.
And that's not how you should do policy, and not when, like you said, so many people died since 2001 on. It's unacceptable.
Well, I mean, the hotel, the Ariana Hotel, has a 5-star rating on Yelp. If you want to, believe it or not, if you want to go back, it only took like a month or two, and then one of the guys sent it to me, like, "Hey, check this out."
I still remember when I came in. The first day I flew into Kabul. This is not a very, it's not going to put me in the best of light, but I flew in and I didn't know that there were active earthquakes because in the Himalayas. So I go to bed and I'm in like boxers and all of a sudden the ground starts shaking. And I grab my pistol because like that's going to be effective.
Yeah.
I'm like, we're under attack. And I run out of out of the Connex container and no one else is there. And I'm running and I ran under the tunnel, right, to go back to the embassy from like and I run there. No one's there. I'm like, this place is fucking crazy. We're under attack. And then like one of the Gurkhas sees me and he's like, are you okay? You're in your underwear. And I go, I got a gun, right? Like that's disturbing too. Like it's an earthquake. I was like, oh, okay. So I go back. And then the next day, I go to bed, and all of a sudden it starts rumbling again. I'm like, fucking earthquake. So I don't go anywhere. And then it's all over the radio, like, we're under attack. And I'm like, God damn it. Like, I can't figure this place out. But when I drove in from, when I was there in 12, they were building, I think it was a Hyatt or something like that, but they were building a new hotel on the other side of Massoud Circle. And
yep.
And the scaffolding was up, and then the framing was up, and it had line of sight into the embassy compound.
Yes.
And I was like, well, that doesn't make sense. And then sure enough, I was there when we got rocket attacked, right, from that location. So you just look at it, it's like the U.S. government in the end is just a very large DMV, right? That is the same government that is going to say, hey, listen, we're going to allow an American corporation to build a sniping position 400 yards away. So, yeah, not a lot of thought went into going into the country. I don't think a lot of thought went into leaving the country.
It's and I didn't mean to obviously put you on the spot.
No,
were you still in the organization when they left Afghanistan, or had you been out? Were you
I was out. I was out.
You were out. I can't imagine the second and third order effects globally.
Right.
You know what I mean? But
It'll be interesting if it will affect recruiting. I still remember one of the issues that we had with.
I mean, how could it not?
Yeah. Well,
Right?
I mean, PFC Manning was a big issue, right? That was it was a low-level private first class that had a secret access and gave those WikiLeaks documents, right? And so it didn't really affect because of our source protection. I don't think many of our sources were identified, if any, right? But by luck, there was a culling, and so we lost some. But that had such a chilling effect on people saying yes to work with us moving forward, especially in Afghanistan, right? Chet, I trust you. I'll give you this information. I know you're keeping me safe. But like all information, once I pass it on, there's no, like, all bets are off, right? And so it will be interesting to see with like the retribution killings that the Taliban executed, same thing that's happening, in Gaza right now with the retribution now that Hamas has taken back over, right? People are going to wonder, like, can I trust you? Because once the issue du jour goes to another country, say, I don't know,
Venezuela, yep.
You sit there, it's like, well, what are you going to do for me? Like, I'm the object of your affection right now, but then you leave me, and I'm the one that has to stay back in country and have all these bad things maybe happen to me. So
right.
it'll be crazy to see the outcome of it.
Yeah, I had to console with my father. He did a couple tours in Vietnam and worked very, very closely with the Chu Hoi program and indigenous. And that was one of the first things that I asked him. And not that I hadn't asked him prior. As we were growing up, like, hey, what was that like? 65 to 68, and then seeing it all kind of whatever. And obviously, I kind of knew the answers, but you're young and you want to. Well, and then I kind of readdressed it. Because I wanted to, like, those close relationships that you build, the Shaheen and the fighting force that we became very close with. And, it's like, man, I don't want to say there's any consultation. It's just maybe knowing that, okay, hey, like I said, talking to the old man, like, you're not the first person to go through this.
Right.
Unfortunately, you're not going to be the last, right? And you have zero control over it. Obviously, there's no, I'm not a policy maker. I'm a very, very tiny cog in a wheel, a giant wheel. But it's like you said, it's unfortunate, and hopefully we learned from our mistakes. Time will tell, I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, it'll be interesting to see, with Bashar al-Assad gone and how that's going to all echo in through Syria. I mean, there's a lot of uncertainty and a lot of violence that needs to be addressed. And the question really does come down to, are we the kind of people who want to be 1939, 1940 America, right? Or do we want to be more like 70s and current day, right?
Interesting.
And so, like, do we want to be the people that bring peace to the world? Are we the kind of people that can do it? And I think the other thing that's really interesting is, and this was an issue in Afghanistan, democracy doesn't work there like it does here.
Right.
Right? Like, everyone's like, oh, democracy is so much better. It's like, you know what? You say that, but our government is shut down. Do you know where that doesn't happen? A kingdom.
Right.
When you have a kingdom and one person tells you what to do, it's very effective.
Yeah, there's
right?
pros and cons to it, right?
There are pros and cons. So, like, I still remember I was there for the election in 12, and it's democracy. You have these donkeys, donkeys with Tupperware containers on both sides, bringing the votes in.
Sure.
And there was no reason to check them because they'd be escorted by the son of the tribal chief. And the tribe, like 50,000 people, they're like, these are all for Karzai. Because it's all based on ethnicity. He's Pashtun, not Hazara or Tajik. So it's like he wins by 62% because 62% of the population is Pashtun, right? Like, so you would be like, what do you think about democracy? They're like, it's not very effective, right? We rather have a strong leader here. And so when we go to these countries and we want to bring peace, like, is democracy the best thing for Gaza? Like, I don't know. Like, is Hamas just going to be the shadow governors and the shadow operation?
Without
right?
a doubt. Yeah.
Like it was with the Taliban. Like, democracy is so easily hijacked by strong leaders, right? And not in a way of like election fraud, not that way. But it's one where if you've got an individual that can get people to rally behind that person and they vote you in legitimately, that person then is democratically elected, but then can ruin things. So democracy doesn't work everywhere, especially when you think about the efficiency of a strong man or strong woman despot.
Yeah, and it's that old saying, right? Like, it briefs well.
Yeah.
Right? It briefs well. And, and then obviously when the rubber meets the road in application, there's pros and cons to all of it. Well, that is a fantastic segue. Like, China, Russia, in your personal and professional opinion, what do you see in the next 5 to 10 years? Who should we be paying attention to?
What's that line? In God we trust, everyone else we monitor. But I mean, it'll be interesting to see what happens with Taiwan. I think Taiwan's going to be in the South China Sea, and depending on how you draw the line in South China Sea. I don't want to make this woke political, but it is interesting to think about. I forgot what Disney movie it was, but I think it was like with a Yeti. But they showed a map of like the South China Sea, and the way they had drawn it didn't show that China had total control of it, like in that area. Like I think China claims it all the way down to Vietnam. It's crazy. And so the movie that was released over in Asia named it differently.
Yeah,
right?
I remember I remember this. Yeah.
And so it's a small thing. It is a small thing. Like, who cares? It's a kid's movie. That's how China works, right? Like, we are making our intent known. And if you choose to believe it or not, that's up to you. I've always been amazed. M Butterfly is a operation that the Chinese ran against a foreign diplomat, and where the operation was 25 years in the making.
Sure.
Right?
Yep.
Because that's how they look at it.
Long term, right.
Right? Like I still remember when, I think it was Nixon. When Nixon went to China, and it was the first meeting, he goes, democracy is the best form of government. Like, have you thought about going in? I'm definitely paraphrasing. He's far more eloquent. Chairman goes, we've been around for 2,000 years. Mm-hmm. You're 200 years old. Give it 1,800 years and we'll figure out. Well, then we'll talk, right?
Then we'll talk, right.
So that's where, like, China, when people are like, well, it sounds bad. What do you see in the next 5 years? China's not thinking 5 years. China's thinking 500 years. Talk about the surrender of Hong Kong. When the Brits signed the treaty saying that they would hand it over in 100 years. And China's like, perfect, we'll wait, right?
Yeah.
And so it's kind of funny when you think about Russia, I would think right now, like obviously with Ukraine, and it's very concerning the ties that they have with the drone program, with the Chinese drone program, and showing, that the drones they're using, they found a hard drive that had surveillance from testing that was in China. So it's clearly a Chinese drone, and they have North Koreans fighting. So there is this like almost cartoonish axis of evil that we have to pay attention to.
Yeah.
And it's concerning, like when Franco was in charge in Spain, right? Like, and he was going through the Spanish Revolution. Like, the Nazis fought there to train. That's how they learned their tank maneuvers in the 30s, right? And so they became very, very good, and off the bat could do their blitzkrieg starting September 1st, 1939. And that's what I get concerned about with the fact that, in Syria there's Russians, and you've got the Wagner group, and they're getting OJT that we're not getting.
Yep.
And I think it'll be interesting to see what happens, especially with the Marine Corps, as you move from more like truly amphibious landings, right? Like as opposed to working in the deserts, right? Now it's going to be interesting. So I know that's a very circuitous way of saying I have no idea, but it would be something where I say, whatever you're thinking about with China, just know that whatever you're thinking of, triple the timeline, and then think that's when they'll do it.
Yeah, it's a tough. I appreciate your insight, right? Because it's a fun thought experiment. Because there's kind of what we're fed, and then there's whatever experiences that we have, right? And I've got friends, and I'm sure you do too, that are active over in Ukraine right now. And what they can tell me when they can tell me is they're like, hey, dude, the leaps and bounds, the timeline, like the accelerated timeline where TTPs change by like hourly. Right? Hourly. It's so EW electronic warfare heavy, and I'm not telling you anything you don't know. It's like just always interesting hearing it from the ground, from the ground truth, where they're like, dude, the way we think about warfare with the implementation of these drones, like we're already behind the power curve.
Caroline, my wife, I forgot what it was. Maybe it was New Year's. But in Hong Kong, they did a drone show, right? And at the end, they created a QR code out of the drones, the lights, and you could take it.
Fucking amazing.
Well, she goes, that's what she said. She goes, that's fucking. I go, that's fucking scary. So if you think about the ability to position several hundred drones so that they are able to stay on station for enough time and enough angles to become a pixel for a phone to pick up, means you can swarm them anywhere you want. Like this is kind of like saying, and in terms of a dual use technology, right? Like you can use gunpowder for fireworks and gunpowders for mortars, right? And it scares me about the light show, and I'm like, how is this not training and formation? How is this not using in the open an opportunity to operationalize and potentially lethalize drones? And a 1-to-1 ratio sounds right. Like it's scary. Like it's also scary about those TTPs. Like they have all those in Ukraine, like the changes, the netting that they're putting up on the tanks, and I'm like, they're going straight World War II stuff again, right? Where it's just it's crazy, and it's so cheap, and it is fly by wire, like the old what are those old missiles, like the tow missile style, right?
Yeah, tow missiles.
Oh my God, like that's what this is, but cheaper.
Yeah. Yeah, it's incredible to hear. It's incredible to hear those individuals, like I said, kind of unclass, debrief like the problems that they're, and I obviously I won't name him, but he's like, dude, I can be here for 3 months, I can go home for a month, and when I come back, it's nothing that worked 3 months ago is working anymore. Yeah, he goes, it's just a race to the most effective thing from minute to minute, right, on both sides of the fence.
Yeah, and I remember writing a paper in college about the fact that I didn't believe any war could ever really be won anymore. The idea with the creation of the true nation state, through like the 1800s and 1900s, as we went through World War I, and everything was kind of coalesced, and all of a sudden you have people who don't just live; they live as a Frenchman or an American, and you can't take that away. And it becomes this enduring aspect of insurgency, right? Like Afghans are still Afghans, even though they were for 20 years. So that and Ukraine is a perfect example of the resiliency of statehood. Whatever Russia does, even if they took over all of Ukraine will still fight. Like Klitschko, the boxer who's the mayor, like he's there. He's not going anywhere. And if you want to martyr him, great. You cut off a head, you get 10 more, right? So it's interesting, the idea of when we're talking about China and they're wanting to bring Taiwan in, or like Russia trying to like recapture, like more like after the Crimea, they want the Ukraine, and would they want to get more of the old Warsaw Pact and try and get Poland under. And the question really does come down to, is Afghanistan a great learning tool moving forward? That if America wants to get involved, you got to understand it's going to be protracted. There's not going to be a winner in 3 years, and then everyone goes, I guess I'm Russian now. Those days are long gone, and the question really does come down to, is war going to be an other effective mean of diplomacy, or do we just really need diplomacy? Like I'm not talking going back all the way to like creating like the UN, and before that any sort of international peace union. But it is going to be interesting to see how it affects the ability to stage wars, and just understand that they're going to go on for years. The next one could go on for 20 years. Ukraine should not have been able to put up a fight, and it's been 4 years now?
Right.
Like
it's amazing.
It's amazing. So
especially with what Russia has thrown at them. Well, that brings up the next question. Like, with that being said, to caveat like that thought experiment, like, is isolationism, is that even in today's day and age, is that even a realistic option? Because you think about all of the intervention, if you will, right? All global intervention, right? And then we have these long periods of occupation, whether it's Afghanistan, the Middle East in general, right? Like, and then I don't want to say a layman, but like a snap, knee-jerk reaction, like let's just reel everybody in and fucking sit tight. Like, is that even realistic in your professional opinion?
No, but when I went to law school, I was amazed that I was with, and was from like 2018 to 2021, and I realized that some of these kids that were 25, like, if their first memories were locked in at 4, had never lived in an America that wasn't at war, right? Like
that's a good point.
So they're fatigued, but they have nothing else to know, right? Like we had the chance to have 90s. One of my favorite stats about the 90s is we had so little war going on after the wall fell that Tom Clancy wrote a book about drug cartels, because that was the next clear and present danger. Right. And so it's like, that was like, wait, your biggest problem was cocaine? Like, that's not a problem today. So it'll be interesting to, again, talk like 5, 10, 15 years in the future when these people who are war tired bring in isolationism, right? Like the reason we took so long to get into World War II was because World War I, we lost so many for a cause that no one could really understand. Like they understood, but like it's not our war, it's across the pond. Like that was drove it. And so I think that's an issue. The other one, and not to get too much on tariffs, but there's that old saying that says like when goods stops and trade stops crossing borders, armies do. Right?
Yep.
And so there's something to be said about the fact that like an economic isolation could lead to a more forward-leaning military involvement throughout the world. So, yeah.
Time will tell, right? And we'll have a front row seat to all of it, right?
Oh my God, yes.
You'll have a front row seat.
And you know what? It's going to be so fun watching the people that are growing up. And I'm not going to say kids today, but I got gray hair. I'm allowed to say it, right? Like when I got a kid named Tristan who's got to handle a grenade, right? It's like, and like all the soft parenting where it's like, okay, Tristan, like make sure to you got to double knot those boots. Do you feel like you can fight today? It's okay. Go ahead, sit in the corner. Like it's a different group of people that are going to join the service. And I know that there has been a lack of motivation in the agency recently, I understand, where people just don't want to work. Right?
Yep.
And they'll go overseas and they're like, oh, I live in like Mexico City now. And so I can go catch a bullfight or I can go watch soccer or this is just a paid 3-year vacation. Where it's like, no, you got to beat the streets and get recruitments. Like you're here for the USG. You're not here for you. And that has kind of been lost and there's been a work ethic. And it was there when I was there. Let's not be serious. Like, for every person that put in 20 hours, there was a person that put in 2 and slept for 18.
Sure. Yeah.
But it'll be interesting to see if we have a capacity to fight in 15 years.
It is interesting that and you don't want to sound like a crotchety old fuck, right? You know what I'm saying? Like you said, you're
get off my fucking lawn.
Yeah,
like, that's me.
we're old. You know, we're long in the tooth. You know, you're 44.
Yeah.
I'm 45. I don't feel like but it's you rate your opinions, right? And we saw it on our side too, where. And there's that old kind of cliche, like, back kids
in the day.
now, like I'm not, but there is you can see it. Like there is, and it's almost like, I want to say like our generation, so to speak, was like, hey, nobody cares, work harder, just keep pushing.
Right.
And then, but I say they, the younger generation, even your special operations guys, like your military guys, as we're referencing, like they have more of a, dare I say it, healthy work-life balance. You know what I mean? Where where their job isn't necessarily like their identity.
Right.
Right. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing because obviously there's pros and cons to both ways. Like we were very effective, or I felt like I was very effective, but I was affected at my job. Everything else sucked because all my bandwidth was towards my job. Right. There's you can take anything to extremes. Right.
Right. I mean, Reagan had that great joke / comment about the fact that there was a hippie that was coming to him, and he's like, "You don't know what it's like growing up in today because we have cheap international flight, right? That you didn't have in the '60s and '50s. Now you can jet set anywhere you want. Like you don't know what it's like because you didn't have what we have." And then Ray goes, "Yeah, because we invented it."
Yeah.
Right? We needed it, so we fucking made it.
We were working.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
The answer here is you're welcome. We were working. So it's interesting, and I know this is getting nostalgic. One of my wife's favorite movies is Miracle, like the one of the hockey.
The
right?
hockey, yep.
And it is the hyper-humanization of this, of the younger generation of the self, which is healthy. Like it. Yes, it doesn't do you any good to work at a corporation for 40 years, blood, sweat, and tears. You are utterly replaceable.
Sure.
Right? That's the first thing I've learned at the agency, where it's like, We can send you, we can send like Tim, we can send Sarah. It doesn't matter who the fuck we send. You're not the second coming of Jesus.
Well, and
right?
that's sometimes that's tough to swallow
And,
at
oh my
first,
God,
right?
yeah, well, right. I mean, don't worry. I carried enough healthy ego that it didn't ding my car too bad. But I was like, yeah, they'll do it, but not as well. But now that people are focusing more on their mental health and themselves, and it sounds so bad, taking ownership of who they are, which is a great thing. But going back to the miracle, now you're playing for the name on the back, not the name on the front.
Right.
Right? And so one of those things where I remember I asked somebody, it wasn't you, but I asked them, like, what is it like joining the Marine Corps? And they go, officer or enlisted? And I'm like, enlisted. He goes, yeah. It's like you show up and they take all of your civil rights away, and every time you get promoted, you get one back.
You're right. Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You can't speak. You can't necessarily. But there is that homogeny that is so important for esprit de corps, right? And that was when I was as a consultant for like the last 7 years, and what I'm hoping to continue after I go to MIT here in a little bit is creating high performance teams, right? And it's so much about the psychology that we can either look at the kids today and just tell them to work harder and go play outside and put the fucking phone down.
Mm-hmm.
Or we take the time to learn how to work around them and extract extra utility. One of the things, especially with AI, one of the issues that a lot of people are having, like Amazon, I'm sure you saw they're laying 30,000 people off. I think they lost 14,000 this last week.
Mm-hmm.
And so with AI and especially ChatGPT in the universities, they're going back to blue books. I don't know if you remember blue books, but like blue books were like literally blue books, and you would get a question and you have to handwrite it, the answer for your exam.
I got to remind you, I went to email college. Yeah.
And so one of my good friends, she was the dean at BC for economics, and she had to have writing assignments in classes because the kids' hands weren't strong enough to write an essay for an hour. Like, remember?
Isn't that amazing? Holy shit.
And so they're trying to go back to sticks and bricks. And I'm not like, an AI native. I understand it, and I think it's great. But what AI does is this. It does for us now what word spell check did for you and me. Our parents were like, these kids don't have to sit there and spell words. Like, they have spell check. We're not going to be able to spell anymore as a nation. We're fucking doomed. And before that, they're like, a calculator.
Right,
what?
sure.
No, longhand. I want you to use a slide rule. If you don't use a slide rule, like, you remember in Apollo 13 where they're like, oh, yeah, it checks, right? No. What it does is it, again, goes back to the cognitive load. It means that instead of telling kids to work on blue books and show me that you understand the material, why don't I have you prompt ChatGPT in class, and then what it gives you, you compare and contrast and critically assess.
Yeah, use it as like a sanity check, so to speak. Versus
Or actually use it for what you are going to use it for in the workplace. Either you can say, well, AI took my job, and jobs will be taken, right?
Without a doubt.
Without a doubt. But that doesn't mean jobs don't exist. If you know how to use that tool, you can amplify what you're doing, right? And so that's where I think with, the technology that we're working with today, and like with the kids, and like going back to like, I don't know if they'll be able to fight. You don't go to war with the army you want. You go with the army you have.
Right.
And so if these kids are the kids that we have, work with it, right? Like, and it sounds bad because we're old curmudgeons that did it the hard way. They can do it the easy way. That means not that they're laying on their heels and not working hard. They just are becoming different kind of thinkers than we are.
Different kind of thing. That's right. And like I was having this conversation the other day, and I went, it's going to be a good segue because I want to get into your company, right? Like if you look back at a long enough timeline, there's certain inventions or things that happen, like
watershed moments,
right? Like the automobile, flight. There was life before that. After, like, we grew up with the internet. Like, I remember pre-internet. I definitely remember pre-cell phone.
Right.
And then there's kind of life after that, right? Well, man, what is it going to be like? Like, what is it, there is I mean, AI, and as it, advances and grows and whatever, and it's very easy to get scared, right? It's very easy to like, oh shit, Skynet, and it's going to be gnarly,
100%.
and which is, obviously a possibility, but like, I find it fascinating to sit in wonderment to think like over the next 10 or 15 or 20 years or however much longer I have left on this planet, like my wife and I were talking the other day, like I took typing class in 7th grade, like computer typing class. My 5th grader has a cell phone.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like it's like, what are they gonna see?
Right.
Like what are those watershed moments that they're gonna see? Right.
Like Gen X and millennials are caught in two worlds, like you had said. Like a lot of us, I got to see your house. You live in a beautiful area, very, very quiet and serene, right? And where kids can run around and play on the bikes. And that's how we grew up. Plus we had lawn darts. And I'm pretty sure that when we did you remember the operation where I think the guy yelled, right? Why is he awake? Yeah. Why is he awake in the surgery? But we stood between two worlds and we got to transition with it. So the question you're kind of saying is what are these kids going to transition to next?
100%.
And I still remember when I was at the agency, the biggest thing we had to deal with was we had to declare to the agency every time we traveled anywhere. It wasn't a Mother May. I was a little Mother May I, but it was that we needed to keep a log because that was when retinal scanners became a thing.
Right.
And so if I went in true name to Dubai, I can't go in alias because they have my retinal scan. And that was the biggest thing we had to worry about. And now with facial recognition in a class of 1,000, I don't know what's going to do with technology. I will say real quick, we used to make this joke of in operations, in highly technical areas, you go back to sticks and bricks.
Sure. Yeah.
And in sticks and bricks, you use tech. For instance, in Moscow, in the old days, they would find a dead rat and they'd stuff, like a USB or a microfiche or something like that, and then they put Tabasco sauce on it because dogs hate Tabasco sauce.
Right.
And so you could leave a dead rat there. If you're in Kinshasa and you leave a dead rat, it's going to be eaten, right? So you have to use tech there. And so it'll be interesting to see. There's a lot of studies going on right now about, especially Gen Z and Gen Alpha, how they are moving away from social media. And not that they're finding new ways to engage them with phones and everything like that, but they're starting to go tech light, right? And trying to find this thing, this idyllic period that we have. But I would say that AI, there is going to be a bubble, or we are in a bubble, right? Because anytime a word like the tulip, what was that called? The tulip. Whoever's watching this is going to scream it out loud, and I'm not going to know it. But the tulip bubble, right? Where it's everyone speculated that tulips were going to be big, and then there was a bite, and then everyone lost their money, in the Netherlands. And so I feel like that's where we are with AI right now, where it's becoming a buzzword. And so there's a lot of investments that if you can say that you have AI, but it's not AI, it is using ChatGPT and you're overlaying something on top of it, utilizing ChatGPT, as opposed to going in a new direction. So for instance, with our company, what we try and do is we have people that there's for instance, if a company uses one enterprise software, let's say this thing called Jira. Jira is it's a way to do tickets and customer interaction, right?
Okay.
And then you got this other thing called Datadog, and that is another software. And they usually work in concurrently, but they don't necessarily talk to each other the same way, right? And so we find ways for existing software. Our business model is you come to us with knowledge that there are two pieces of software that are being used in a company, and there is a deficiency that you found, and we will use AI to create that bridge and then sell it quickly to one of those two companies as an exit, right? We're not trying to be the next Apple. We're just trying to make Apple work with another platform more easily, and we're not trying to be $1 billion. We're just trying to make $1 million every sale, right? But I have gone to a lot of these meetings where I work with a lot of VCs and private equity groups, and you'll just have all these people.
VCs, venture capital.
Yes, and private equity, it was PE. And so they'll usually give this seed money, and you have these people come in with a pitch. 3 people come in, they're like, we're going to fix this issue using ChatGPT. Like, that's not a product. And so I think that the more companies try and use AI in an inefficient way, like us, I use ChatGPT like Google, right?
Me too. Yep.
Right? Like, hey, give me the best Italian lasagna homemade recipe, please, right? And then it'll search for me. But that is like saying you can use Excel to color out some of those cells and just do little math, as opposed to multiple pages and really complex algorithms.
Right, and really using it to its fullest extent.
And so I think there will be a culling here where the excitement wears off and someone finally goes like, what's the utility? And so ChatGPT is awesome and it is revolutionary. But it'll also be the big issue on top of all this, and I'll stop, is I think the biggest issue coming up is going to be data sovereignty, right? Data sovereignty is the idea that in the old days, like with Apple and all that stuff, remember they used to say like, oh, it's free. Well, it's not free. You're the customer.
You're the product.
You're the product. You're the
Yeah,
product.
you're the product.
Right? We're getting your data. And so in certain situations, like let's say that you are in M&A, mergers and acquisitions, or something, and you've got a bunch of clients, and you're sitting on all this great information that if you get it out to the street, it would be great. But those people aren't signing up. They're signing up for your product not to become a product. And AI requires you, even if you scrub it and you anonymize it and stuff like that, eventually at some point, your data that you are putting in is becoming a product, and I feel like people are going to have pushback on that. The only reason I don't think so is something you said earlier today, which is you will drive 3 or 4 minutes and put up Google Maps, right?
Yeah.
Of course. And it's free. But it also, I know where I'm going. I just want to see if there's a blue line.
Mm-hmm.
But then that tracks me. And then I get ads because it sees who I drive past every time, and it lets me know.
Yep.
I used to make the joke all the time of like, people were all with the Snowden thing, like the metadata that they were taking. Like, yeah, but that was all scrubbed and it was anonymized and it was used to protect people and stop terrorist attacks. You don't like that, but you don't mind that a global corporation is actively surveilling you and using your location among other people as they actively track you to tell other people, hey, it doesn't look good here. And you surrender that freely so that you can go somewhere where you know how to go. You've done it 100 times, but you just do it by memory.
Yeah, it's so bizarre when you and you and I get exposed to, because obviously there's the vulnerability aspect of that, right? Now my tech is now, where it used to be an asset, now it's an extreme vulnerability.
Right.
Whether it's the telematics of my car, the cell phone, you name it, right? Say nothing about the existing infrastructure from country X, Y, or Z, smart city, safe city, stuff like that, right? And I'll have to you and I, it's like, hey man, this thing is a problem, that I have to mitigate, and you get into the quote unquote, civilian world where they just seem to not have as big of a problem with it as where someone like you or I were forced into really digging deep and realizing how vulnerable and exploitable that tech makes you, right?
Let's circle back quickly to the CIA and clandestine operations and bring this in, okay? So, as you remember before, I was talking about China, how they think like 25 years, 50 years, 100 years down the road. And that's short term. Like, what's the rush? One of the biggest concerns, I think, for operating clandestinely is Instagram and TikTok, are obviously pretty tied in with the reels. And there was the Supreme Court case with TikTok versus, USG. But now they're putting on Insta like the ability to track location and see where you are. Like hey, this is where I am. Like, I'll show. And don't worry, Insta says, if you don't want this to happen, you can turn it off. No, it's still there, right? It's still there.
Yeah.
And so what my concern is, the national security threat that TikTok presents to us and our ability to conduct politics, military operations, and intelligence operations is that a case officer of 20, like the things that we were talking about with the kids, a case officer who is currently 5 years old, but will be overseas in 25.
Yep.
And has photos that are would not want them public. Before you had to have a guy in a bush taking a photo. Now this person's giving them up for free.
Yeah.
And China will hold them for 25 years. And when you become a captain or a PFC Manning, or if you are a case officer, or if you're running for governor, and China goes, by the way, we've got these things from 40 years ago.
Right, right.
And so I feel like people don't understand. We were raised quickly and scarily that if it's on the internet, it's there forever.
Yeah, it's right.
One of the reasons I didn't tell that little anecdote about Afghanistan was because this is going to be on and it cannot be erased, right? I lose that power of information when I put it out. I've lost control. And so that is a omnipresent and scary threat that I think is going to affect the ability for people, especially intelligence officers, because China might not go after you knowing you're an intelligence officer, you're a State Department officer, but they got lucky. Right, and when they tracked you,
it was definitely a tie, as you can well imagine, because I just left in last February, so it wasn't too long ago. I mean, it was a daily conversation as to and you're much more educated on the process than I am, right? Like I have a very layman's understanding, but the amount of time, money, and man hour, the apparatus to make that go away,
right,
is almost inconceivable, right? Right.
And not just that, it's highlighting. So when I came on to the agency, you were supposed to drive up, and this is back when you could take batteries out of phones, right?
Right.
Yeah, the halcyon days. But if cell towers are easily hacked, right, and the data is relatively easy to come by a foreign intelligence service. I mean, think of all the data breaches you hear about every day, right? What happens if you all of a sudden are somebody that always turns their phone off? You never have your phone not with you. And then suddenly you're overseas and you don't have your phone. I got picked off during training for SDRs because I have 20/20 eyesight. Like, not to brag, but these peepers are pretty good, okay? But when I had to try and pick off a license plate in a rearview mirror driving that's 40 or 50 yards behind me, and I can only get 3 digits, I would put on glasses and make it just that much clearer. But I never wore them any other time. And so when they saw me put on glasses, the team knew I was going operational.
Yep.
And so they're like, follow him, he's going. Otherwise, they didn't do it. Similarly, if you're always with your phone and then suddenly, and you're pinging and you're overseas, so the host nation owns that data, and all of a sudden you have your phone all the time, and then this day you don't.
Yep. Ding, ding, ding.
Right? And so as something like a phone or technology becomes
investigative trigger.
Right.
Yeah.
When it becomes so synonymous with your person and your pattern of life that it becomes highlighting that you don't have it, I don't know how to get that is a question that I don't know how to get around because the train has left that station.
Right. It's right. It's going to be very, very interesting, and the organization, I can only imagine the brainstorming or maybe lack thereof, depending on what office you walk into, what they're trying to cook up to, because it would be, it would be entertaining to hear what they're trying to come up with to alleviate, this. Right. You know what I mean? It's it's going to be interesting. It's going to be fun to talk about at the reunions or whatever, right? You know what I mean? Well, speaking of travel, because you've covered so much ground, in the organization and outside of the organization, what are some of the key things? Like, what were some of the bleed over from an educational standpoint of things that were ingrained and you used when you were in the organization that carry over with you now to this day? Obviously security, mindset or, being security conscious.
Sure.
What are some of the things that will never leave you?
Hi, Caroline. Here's your story. When I was dating Caroline, she worked for the International Foundation of Electoral Services. They brought fair and free elections to Africa, for that democracy stuff.
Yeah, sure.
And so she was going overseas to a country, and we had just started dating, and she asked me this question. She's like, what are the 3 things I should do? I go, 1, it's a slightly hot area, right? I think in Bamako, Mali, the Radisson Blu had just gotten attacked. So I go, listen, don't go to an expat bar. All right, go anywhere you want locally, but just don't co-locate where there's a bunch of Americans like then you weren't a target. Now you're a target of opportunity.
Yeah, the expat locations.
Exactly. The alligators just stay in the watering hole.
Yeah.
They don't want that deer. That deer just came to the watering hole,
Yeah.
right? So one is expat bars. The second one, I'm like, when you stay at a hotel, don't stay at the Radisson Blu in Africa, but like maybe go with a non-American hotel because again, it's a target of opportunity. And then I go, the third is try and get a room on the second floor. If I'm in a slightly hot area, first floor is the one that's going to get shot up first. And the third floor, you're going to break your legs trying to jump out the window. So I was like, second floor. She calls me. She's crying on the phone. And she's like, I've been here for 12 hours. Like, I'm staying at a Radisson Blu. I'm on the first floor, and we went to eat at an expat bar. And I'm like, oh, God. Okay, sorry. So those are good ones. But a couple of them that go on is I always make sure I have positive control, right?
Yeah.
Like, I can't tell you how many times I have, when I don't forcibly think about positive control, that's where, like the dummy cords we used to have on our stuff, right? Have your bag. And then another thing I try and do is I close my eyes. Like when I'm getting off a plane, I should have done it on the way here, but I will go down and I don't go with the flow. I will close my eyes, usually like when we're landing, and run a checklist. And I'll just, in a quiet moment before I get lands and pulls up and everyone's getting up, run through what I need to get. I don't want to forget anything, right? And then, so positive control, holding it. The third is don't draw attention to yourself with baggage, right? I love nondescript things. Not so much as to be like, it's super bland and that can highlight, but I never traveled with, like, I had an Osprey bag, right? And that was good, but like it became a really well-known bag and it was expensive. And if it goes on the turnstile and I don't see it first and somebody else, they'll walk with. North Face bags walk all the time at international airports. So in that situation, like, I love bags that are gray or blue, and then I'll put something identifiable on it. But I keep logos off of everything. I always carry cash. Please don't rob me, anyone that's listening to this. But like, I don't go anywhere without hard currency, and I'll usually go to the bank and get at least $100 worth of whatever that currency is before I go in. Because if they lose my bag or I lose my wallet, at least I can make a move from the airport to wherever I need to get to, right? And then the last part is I still do a lot of commentary driving and walking because it creates associative memories. So when I'm walking down the street and it's a new area and I'm going to be there for a week, I'll walk and I'll be like, God, that's like in New York when I was working in Manhattan, right? Be like, that is an awesome building. I bet you there's a tree. I'll make something up. I bet there's a tree in there. And then later on, when I'm walking around, I'm like, where am I? I'm like, oh, it's the treehouse, right?
Yeah,
like,
you're right.
And so, but if I think it, no. And I do look a little weird sometimes when I do it. But if I really need to know an area, I'll talk to myself. And if I want to, I'll have a phone up. But if I need to know it, I'll do that.
And it's interesting, like, so low profile, right? Kind of the name of the game, and it's, we're all creatures of habit and creatures of our environment. Like, keeping a low profile, not drawing attention to yourself, right? And then I will. It's very, very difficult for me, long sleeves, you know what I mean?
Sure,
like, and there's a look, right?
There is a look.
So you almost try and use that to your advantage, right? But in the same aspect, like from a security standpoint, head on a swivel, your levels of awareness, your Cooper's color code, so on and so forth. And then it's assessing, like, using terrain as a weapon, using weapons of opportunity. We used to go through extensive classes of, like, kind of mundane TSA-friendly items that could very, very easily be turned into offensive weapons if necessary, right? Like, I'm not looking for a fight, but at least I'm not naked. You know what I mean? So it's interesting to hear it. That, the commonality is, hey, just don't draw attention to yourself in any way, shape, or form if you can help it.
I mean, I was doing developmental meetings in Afghanistan in restaurants. I mean, you drove me to some of these, right? And so one of the things I was glad I stopped doing was I would always run through my mind, like, and I suffered from hypervigilance disorder after this, and I had to get worked on, which through an amazing treatment with sound. But you would play the what the if. If in a restaurant, there's always a garbage exit out of the kitchen, right? Because they got to take their trash somewhere, and they're not going to carry it through the house. So I would just be like, I would walk in, and I would not look for exits. I would look for where the kitchen was.
Right.
I'd be like, if somebody comes in, I'm going out the kitchen door, right? They're probably not covering it down. So like those kind of things of security awareness of like not just like know the exits, and that's really aggressive. And it being switched on like that takes away from the pleasure of vacation.
It definitely can, yes.
But there's also one where if it only takes a second for me to do it, and it means I can enjoy my vacation instead of wondering, right, then I'll do it. But there's no way to stay in a hypervigilant or a vigilant scenario, right, for too long because it becomes so draining.
Yeah, it's taxing, right? You want to live, breathe, and operate in kind of that yellow.
Yeah.
You know, if you're familiar with the Cooper's color code, and then obviously orange and red. But orange and red are unsustainable for long periods of time.
Right.
Right. Yellow is, depending on what your concerns are, that's just general awareness, head on a swivel. Keep your head out of your phone. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, driving a car,
right.
That's yellow. If you're doing it responsibly, you know
right.
what I mean? If you're not in the radio and not in the GPS or
Defensive
whatever.
driving isn't driving softly and like meekly. It's actively seeing what's going to happen so that you know how to act, right?
Yeah.
Like I said, like when somebody's going to cut me off, I know they're going to cut me off. And it's like I'm not slowing down so that they can do it. I'm just recognizing it and giving them room because they're going to do it anyway.
Yep.
Right?
And you can see it come a mile away.
Right.
Right? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's you brought up a good point where it can take away from, like, my wife and my oldest, we went over to London and Paris, kind of a graduation, gift. And it was my first time in Paris. And I had done my homework a little bit, just light,
Sure.
kind of checking it out. Hey, who do I know in the area? Worst case scenario, where's the embassy? Blah, blah, blah. Number to post one.
Let me stop that really quickly.
Yeah.
A major thing that nobody does is get on the presence list. I cannot get over the fact that people travel overseas. You can notify the embassy that you are in country, okay? And I don't know if you know it, but every time I go anywhere, I will call the American Services desk, be like, hi, this is Chet Nielsen. This is my passport number. I will be in country from March 11th to March 19th. And then I'll give them my contact information. And the important part of this is if something happens and the embassy is aware, it's their obligation to reach out to people on the presence list that have notified them to let me know. Like for instance, if you're in Paris and the yellow vests are spray painting the Arc de Triomphe and there's fires going on, the embassy will let you know to stay away from that area. Like the government is there to help.
Sure,
right?
sure.
So and that's a very low level thing, but in terms of personal security, lean on your taxpayer dollars.
Right.
That for a service that is there and no one takes advantage of.
Yeah, 100%. And I would stop. I would stop. That is fantastic information because I would just, as long as I got the number to post one, I'm good. Right.
Right.
And case in point, what you're talking about, we were walking around in Paris, and I did the average touristy thing, like, hey, what do we want to eat, right? And so we found this, Yelp review, whatever, and it was a short walk from the hotel, short for me, anyways, right? And as we're walking, and it's kind of getting darker, and I noticed immediately within a block or two that the demographic had changed rapidly.
Yep.
And not necessarily in a, like I was going from an affluent area to a crime-ridden area. We'll just say that the local dress changed rapidly.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh.
You could be in Southie. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, what do we got going on here? I'm starting to see, all of a sudden we're the oddballs out, right? Well, not a big deal. We went and had a nice meal, so on and so forth. The next day, we were doing our touristy things, and all of a sudden going kind of back through that area. It's not like I haven't memorized. I've only been there for 4 days. But I recognized a couple of the shops, and I started seeing government vehicle after government motorcades.
Yeah, okay.
And I was like, what the fuck is going on? Of course, my wife, she's she's like, would you turn it off? And I'm like, something's going on. I go, those are government motor, like something is happening.
You'll thank me later.
Right? And she's like, Jesus Christ, David,
right.
And by the time we got back and parked to the hotel, because this was only a handful of years ago, 2, maybe 3, massive, huge riot.
Yeah.
The
yellow vests.
That we had basically Like, had we hit 30 more minutes of traffic, we'd have got stuck in it.
Right.
And I was like, I told you. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, we got to the bar, and I was like, I go, look, that's just where we were at, you know?
I cannot get over how many unforeseen fights happened because I said I told you so to my wife. Like, it always surprises me that is not well received. But yeah, I get that.
If you're paying attention and you know what to look for,
Right.
You'll see it. You'll see it long before most other people.
There's a really good book. I don't know if you read it, called "The Gift of Fear."
I'm familiar.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so I had my wife read it because there's this great chapter about how the brain is just an amazing machine, but it wants to sort. It wants to rack and stack information. And that's where, you're like, oh, there's a demographic. And some people might think like, oh, that is profiling. But it's like, no, it's just sorting, and it's noticing a difference, and you're doing it. One of the chapters in the Gift of Fear talks about how like women, nowhere in nature will where the female is smaller than the male as an animal, will get into an enclosed cage with a male it doesn't know, right? Like a small dog is not going to be, if there's a cage and there's a big old dog that looks mangy, the smaller dog is not going to go in, right? It knows not to. I'm not saying that it's a bad dog. It just doesn't seem right. Yet my wife and a lot of other women in a garage where she parks her car and the elevators will open and there's a shifty looking dude in there. She goes, well, I don't want to go in because I'll make them feel bad if I don't go in. And so they go in and they ignore the fear. Like when you're walking down the street and somebody's coming by and you're like, I should cross the street. Cross the fucking street.
Right, exactly.
Right? Like your body is telling you, your mind is telling you, millions of years of evolution are telling you this is not, something is askew, but social conformity requires you to not do that because there might be an offense about someone you don't know and will never see again. So a lot of times of like, and that's again going back to commentary driving, don't ignore things. And if you want to, say it out loud. Be like, there's a difference between being like, thinking, that doesn't look right, and saying, like, that doesn't look right. The moment I say it, now I know. I can't put that genie back in the bottle, and I'll work. So in that situation, listen to your intuition, and you don't have to have your head on a swivel, but just take facts for what facts are.
Right. Yeah. Your perceived, reality, right?
And appreciate the fact that fear is a gift. Fear lets you know that you might run into something, and you should start working the problem now.
Right.
What the if it, rat fuck it now, right?
Yep, 1,000%. And when we would, whether we were talking about the self-drive class or one of the courses that I used to teach where it was case officers and, cook maker, candlestick makers, and hey, we're going to put you through this 5-day, 5-day school so that one, it's called this, but in subtitles it should be Save Your Own Ass 101, right? And, I am not going to materialize out of thin air if you're overseas and stuff. Like, I'm going to try, right? But like, there's a textbook answer, and then there's what really happens, right? And so, one of the main things that I would harp on these, and they're definitely not children. Like, these are adults, and I'd be like, hey, if you said it earlier, if you haven't what if'd this to the point of nauseum, then you are woefully behind the power curve, right? It's not going to happen on your terms. It's going to happen on their terms. And if you're paying attention and using this training and your levels of awareness are high and you're security conscious and you're listening to your instincts and your gut, you're going to win every fight you don't get into.
And there's what's that line? You're not going to rise to the occasion. Right. You're going to fall back on the most recent relevant training. Right? And so, like, my wife, again, I know that I'm going to bring Caroline up a lot, but we were at a dog park when she was at Michigan for school, and we have this little 12-pound Boston Terrier. And there was a large German Shepherd that was toy aggressive. And he was being watched by these two elderly people that, if he pulled, they'd break a hip. Right? Yeah. And so I was keeping an eye on him.
Who's walking who, right?
Right, but I wasn't throwing the ball when that dog, and then all of a sudden the dog started leaving, and so I threw the ball for Jackson. And sure as shit, that dog turned around, ran, and Jackson got to the ball. And when he started running, I started running.
Mm-hmm.
Caroline, I'm fat. Caroline is so fit and she's so fast. And so I start first. She catches up to me.
She blows your doors off.
Oh, yeah. And then she stopped. And she stopped because she's like, what I'm seeing isn't happening. It's not, no, it's okay. And she stopped. And I kept running to tackle the dog. And so she had the right, it was a little bit delayed response, then the right response. And then she started thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you just don't think.
Right.
Right? Like, I'm not security conscious, like, oh my God, if that dog does, I'm going to tackle it. I'm going to go for the jugular, ranger choke. I'm going to, give it an arm so I can punch it so it has something to gnaw on. No, but I'm going to say, that doesn't look right.
There's a potential problem.
There's a problem.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. I'm not going to rat fuck it, but I'm like, I see there's a problem. I'm going to win this fight by, like you said, I'm not going to put my dog in a dangerous situation.
Right.
And then I did. So, poor on me. But it is one where, if you're in Times Square, you don't have to be all this crazy shit. Like, you don't have to really think that much about it, right? You are still in a Western country. There's police. But that also means that you have to give a modicum of security thought. Like, when I was on the subway, and there was a shifty looking dude right in front of me. And we know there's stories about the subways in New York. And I just moved to the other side.
Sure.
And then I was like, you know what? If he starts like stabbing somebody and going crazy, I'm just going to get off.
Yeah, right.
Right?
You're right.
I'm not going to get it. But like, just take that gift of fear and just move yourself away. And no one knows. I remember an instructor once told me, I was driving and I missed a turn to get to our hunker down site. I'm like, fuck, I missed the turn. And he goes, I wouldn't have known you did that unless you said it. So what's going on in your head about the fact that like you don't want to get in an elevator is only in your head. And so as long as you don't say it, if you just move, they might think that you are waiting for a seat over there. They're not reading your mind. So don't think you're offending people. Just move and keep your shit to yourself.
Right.
And then just leave, right? And there's nothing about there's no glory in heroics in that situation, right? Like, I'll defend myself, but like, I'm old. I had wrist reconstruction. I had a bicep reattached. I have missing some teeth. Like, I've had my face broken, knees, dislocated knees. Like, the years and the mileage have added up.
Sure.
And so now I just don't want to put myself in that spot. The other one that I used to teach when I was a consultant back in the day, I helped airlines that had pilots going to areas. Like when, American Airlines were, not the company, U.S. company airlines were still flying in like Beirut.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And the idea of the basic stuff of if you are in an area where it is a little sketchy at all times, like the idea of varying your route. Right?
Sure.
How many times when we were in Kabul, I would ask us not to take the LC, I'd take the G500, right?
Yep.
Because you look German. And no one hated the Germans over there. They hated U.S. people. So don't take the Land Cruiser, take the Mercedes,
That's right. Yep.
And again, it also goes back to that low profile. One of the things I love about the fact is, especially with the stuff that Nomadic Research does, with your logos, how it's kind of like, you have to really look for it, right? It's a high quality product. Of course, it's not a shameless pitch. It's just, it's good kit, but it's not something that you're going to get shot over for your Air Jordans, right?
Right. Yeah.
Right? And so not even just drawing attention, people aren't coming to render you and put you on a YouTube video with a bunch of like green flags on both sides, right?
Yeah.
They want your shit. So I remember when I got my first like real war zone check and I was living over in that Conex box, I had nothing to spend it on, and I bought a Rolex. I was going to buy a Rolex for my dad. I went and I bought one, and luckily I was allowed to return it because I told him he has the same Timex Iron Man, the one that like the Indiglo, right? That he's
indestructible.
Yes. And I go, Dad, I've got this watch. It's a Rolex. And he goes, does it tell time? And I go, yeah. He goes, so does this.
You're right. Yeah.
And I'm like, why? And he goes, I don't need that. Like, I have it for what it's a high functioning watch. That's not glamorous. No one's going to steal my watch.
Yeah.
No one's going to put a gun to me for my watch. And that's the same stuff with your kit, right? Like, when I'm going overseas, I try and carry, I always pack way too many workout shorts that I'm never going to use. So that's a big one. And then I try and use like something that is, universal, as much a universal, like something that can do lots of weather or lots of whatever. And then when I'm in country, I'll get something there. And then that's a memento to bring home. But I would be like, the less flash you can pull off so that you are not the squeaky wheel, you're not silhouetted, right? Like let the other fool get robbed.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
That's a big one.
It is, and people I think are always looking for some kind of like whiz bang ninja-y, and it's just like, no, if you have to, even if you're capable of those things, like you screwed up so long before the, Apex ninja-y stuff comes into play, the flying neck seal or whatever, like, man, you made mistakes minutes, weeks, months, whatever, but prior to, to having to use that. So let's fix the easy things first.
Did you ever see that study, came out in the 90s, I think, or early 2000s, about police uniforms and crime rates based on how good the uniform was pressed?
Really? No.
Yeah, so it was cops and it was security guards. And the more well put together, crisp, like, if you blouse your blouse or whatever, if you looked crisp, people are like, I'm not going to fuck around with that guy. I'm not going to
fuck around with that. Yeah, that guy, that man or woman,
Right. So that's another thing of like, when I dress, like, I'm wearing a collared shirt. I usually wear one every day. But like, I don't dress like I'm a pushover, right? I'm crisp and I walk and I look around. And so people at least might confuse me for someone that knows what he's doing. The other one, and bringing Caroline back in, she pointed out that I have the true male privilege. Whatever you want to say about male privilege. I am 6'1", 225 or 250 or 275. It depends on the week.
Yeah, it depends on the
week.
It
depends on if I'm sucking my gut in or not. But I have never had to live my life as someone 5'3" and 125
Sure,
pounds.
totally different experience, right?
Totally different experience. So like with Caroline, like when we went to Egypt and we were in Cairo and there was a lady going through the pyramids and she was wearing a red dress with her shoulders out and heels and going to like Khufu's pyramid. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like if anyone's going to get arrested, it's the person in the red dress, or not arrested, attacked or robbed. And she was an influencer, and she was trying to draw attention to herself. And in that situation, and Caroline, she wore this linen shirt that was, I would say, it wasn't the most flattering shirt, but it meant that she blended in, and she was not. You would look at her. I have a beautiful, amazing wife. But in this situation, she didn't. It was during all the attacks in Alexandria, like the churches were all getting bombed, and so she wanted to be somebody that when they looked at it, they're like, "No, next." Like think of people that are going to go after you, like a cop,
right?
Like a cop on the highway, right? Like, what's that like?
Don't be the red Corvette,
or
right?
Or if you're going to speed 5 over. They're going to let you go if you're 5 over. They're waiting for the person that's going 20 over, and they're going to get them because they only get one shot. Otherwise, because then they do it, and it's 2 hours, and they got to do the paperwork. So just be the person that they're like, I'm going to wait for that next fish, right? I can only get one bite at the apple. So in that situation, like, again, a lot of it is appearance and demeanor and like only having one earbud in, like showing that you have one out specifically so that you're telegraphing that you're being aware is always a good idea.
We were talking about... At lunch, we were talking about kind of that first realization when you like I said, like almost like holding up a mirror, right? So we were doing that low pro surveillance work in DC, and the first monumental fuck up I had was not doing my homework and finding out, hey, what is the local dress?
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
They're islands. All these areas are islands.
Right. So. And then there was another epiphanical moment where there was a group of us working there, but we were never, theoretically in the same place at the same time, right? Even if it was across the street, we had the city broken up into basically sections.
Yeah.
And at one point, and let's not pretend that I actually knew what the fuck I was doing, right? You know what I mean? Like looking back on it now, I'm like, holy shit, God. Right? But I needed to kill some time, so for lack of a better term, I hit a cover stop, and it was a bookstore, coffee shop, and I'm like, I can sell this, whatever. And I happened to be looking up and looking across the street at one of my teammates' areas of responsibility. and he was 6'3", on all the gear, really liked the weight room, machine gunner, scout sniper. And I just happened to look up, and I saw him, and he was walking, and he was walking down the street, and the regular, I'll say, DCians are parting like the Red Sea.
Yeah, Moses, I love it.
Because this guy looks like a maniac, and right then, he was only in my field of view for about 20 seconds.
Yeah.
But I went, oh my God, that's what I look like.
Right.
I mean, not the 6'2", 6'3", but I'm like that. Just the way you carry yourself, right? Now, that could be a pro in some of those areas because that's a form of deterrency. Like say, hey, don't bring it over here.
Right.
Right. But in the trying to keep a low profile with what we were doing, it was a huge, detriment. Like you can't walk around like that. You know what I mean? Like you're drawing attention to yourself.
And you should just know what the other part of it is, and this is crazy because we were in the war zone and a lot of things. Like there is applicability, but there's also a realization that those threats that we faced are not going to come after us again, God willing, right? When I'm in Paris, I'm not thinking that I'm going to get a limpet mine, like a magnetic mine attached to my car or whatever. But I'll say this: the other one, even in my mom, I can't believe my mom and dad live in Florida, and there was a scam going on that they with those the air tags, right? And for the elderly, what they were doing was when they would get in their car, they'd case a house and then they would put a tag on that car and then they'd leave and just track it till it left, and then they do a B&E, right? Like why cause a fight? Like let's not turn this B&E into a murder, right? Yeah. And so there's also things to be cognizant of, using offensive tech or defensive tech of have your phone with you and check your air tag. It happened a lot in New York of women are getting at the bar getting an air tag put in, and then you can do a loose follow if not all, and then wait till they get into an area where there's not a lights, and then bad things happen. So in that situation, you really just got to be wary of tech being used against you. Again, not for terrorists or whatever, but for muggings or whatever.
Just crime.
It's just crime.
Yeah,
man.
crime. Yeah, absolutely. Don't make yourself an easy target, right? Don't make yourself an easy target. And I think sometimes people overthink it, and not overthink it in the sense of they're starting to overthink it. I get basic questions, and they're skipping chapters ahead when you don't need to, and that comes from a place of they're not trained and they're inquisitive, right? But it's those very simple things are going to get you out of 99% of your shitters.
And on the flip side of that, let's not take it too far. There's a great reel that I saw where this woman was FaceTiming her friend because she was on a trail. She's like, this guy's been following me for miles. And he walks back, he goes, no shit, it's a walking trail. There's woods on both sides. We're going the same direction, right? In that situation, you can turn it off. Now, granted, be aware, and it's not a bad thing to make a call or do whatever you're going to do, but also be aware of we used to call them ghosts, right?
Sure.
Ghosts and surveillance is where everyone that's listening to this, just for fun one day when you're driving and you've got to make 5 or 6 turns from your house to the grocery or whatever, see how many people come with you.
Sure.
And you'll notice that you're taking this cut through because everyone takes the cut through. Right. And it's a quiet street, but if you're local, you know it. And it's not to be what's that line from Airplane? Tom never gets a second cup of coffee at home, right? What's going on here? But look at how many people actually follow you because you're going the same direction. You're going to the same place. That's why when you do surveillance detection routes, you have to do time, distance, and change in direction over multiple cover stops to drag them into different areas. So this is where hypervigilance can be a detriment, where it's when your head's on a swivel and you're starting to see things that aren't there.
100%.
And that's scary too. But that just comes down to training and doing it more often, right? And being more aware.
1,000%. I was having this conversation with my middle daughter yesterday, literally, and I was like, hey, if you want to see something or you want to find it, you will. You can talk yourself, whether it's there or not, right? And I used the analogy when we were in one of the courses where they broke the class into basically two sections. Group A, go out and do this task. Group B, similar task, just in a different area. Hey, by the way, make sure you come back and note surveillance.
Right.
Right. Well, I want to say one of the senior guys there, right? But I was one of the only GRS guys there. And so, not that qualifies me as a surveillance detection expert,
Right.
you know what I mean? But whatever. And at least at the time, well, the moral of the story is both sides came back with a phone book. And I couldn't be prouder of all of those. And they're like, hey, guess what? Group A, you didn't have any. Group B, we put them all on you.
Yeah.
But I had a phone book. And you couldn't have talked me out of it.
So
right?
at the farm, when we would do our training meetings, like, you have to go meet a developmental whatever, you have to do a surveillance detection round. And sometimes you'd have surveillance and sometimes you didn't. And just like real life, or real spy life. But I won't say how many misses you were allowed to have, right? That's a little closer held. But when you got to the meeting with your role player, you had to give them if you were under surveillance, you gave them a green card and they just took it and put it in their pocket and you just continued going on. And green card meant I came here under surveillance, but for the purposes of the training mission, we can't not hold this meeting. I'm just saying I saw it. But if you called a ghost, it was the same penalty as bringing surveillance with you. And so it counted. So if you missed, let's say like 3, and you called 3 ghosts, you don't know how to do the surveillance detection route. That means you're not doing a good enough route to siphon out those ghosts.
To filter it out.
And so it's interesting that like in our training, seeing ghosts is as bad as being under surveillance. I will say it doesn't affect the mission per se, but in real life, if I see a ghost, I'm not going to go to that meeting.
Right, when it goes back to that cognitive load, right? You start calling those things, you're talking yourself into it.
So if I'm going to go meet asset A and I think I have it, I'm going to go and do my break-off route and do my my break-off cover stop, and then I'm going to go back home. And I'm not going to get that intel that day. Now, granted, the asset doesn't die as if I brought surveillance with me, but I still didn't get the intel. And it makes me an ineffective case officer. So the agency looks at calling ghosts as equally bad as bringing surveillance with you.
Sure. And what was the old adage? Hey, we're going to live to Tradecraft another day here. You know what I mean? Yeah. And that was a very different. Once again, like I thought I knew the answer to the question, and then once I was educated, I was like, oh yeah, that makes a lot more sense than what I had going on in my brain. You know what I mean?
I'm trying to remember. If you've got like 10 cars against you, right? And you've got partial plates and they're rotating, so you might not get the first car. You might have missed it in the second car, and then you got to wait for leg 3. One of the things that I did was I grew up playing golf with my dad at this course, and I knew it because we play often. And so I used the green. Or I used the course. I knew what hole 1, hole 2, hole 3 looked like. And then in my mind, I would place that because you can't write. You can't write down anything, right, while you do the surveillance. You just have to memorize all the cars, make, model, and at night, as you remember, you got to memorize also headlights and the distance between them. Like I could tell the difference between a Honda Civic and a Honda Accord based on their headlights at 200 yards, whatever it was. But what I would do is, there's no way to be like, okay, I turned off Cleveland Street, and then that person followed me from Cleveland to 2nd, and then I was on 2nd, and I turned on Oak, and then left on Cambridge, and then he broke off at that point. That's a lot of information to remember.
Right.
Okay? So I would visualize the course.
And kind of associate, right?
And I would overlay it. I'm like, all right, so I saw him at hole 1. I saw him at the bunker, and then I saw him this, and then at the flag, and then on the flag, I would visualize the last turn I missed him, or where he broke off. And then I would go to hole 2 and hole 3 and hole 4, and that way I could recall at the end of the route, and I would just sit with my eyes closed as I was, going through my provocative area, and then rolling in, and because you could always break off at any time, and I would just go through the course one more time. And that was a way to rack and stack this otherwise unsortable information because you've got maybe 200 license plates that you're going to see over the course of 2 hours. And
an incredible amount of data.
Right. And it's like, well, I'm looking for it. Did it match? Did it? And how do you coalesce that into one sortable document in your mind so that you can be like, I only got him for like 6 seconds, but I saw the, R2, 3. And another thing I always tell people if they want to learn how to do surveillance, always start with the letters. Mm-hmm. Okay. So when you're doing it, usually license plate is like R279965, right? Like, don't try and remember the whole thing. And numbers get juiced up quickly. Like an 8, a 6 can look like an 8, a 3 can look like an 8, but letters are letters, and you just have to remember 3. If I remember there was a red sedan that had an RX, and I see RX red sedan, that's enough later on.
That's a win, yeah.
That's a win. So when you're doing it, just remember that you don't have to remember everything. That's impossible. Remember enough that you can quickly recall and associate.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's important, and we're getting into like the training and stuff. One of the things that the OOs on our cadre, like,
real quick, OO is the same as CO, depending on the year. Operations officer and case officer, like they just changed names.
Thank you. Yeah, we would do basically like memory palace, right? And like call it whatever you want, like walking through a scenario, just a benign, think movie set, and not giving them almost no information, right? Just like, hey, you're going to walk through, you're going to spend 3 minutes in this. You can go wherever you want. You can do whatever you want. Obviously, don't touch anyone or don't touch anything, right? And then bring them out and say, hey, start asking questions, right? And you would always find that the security or the GRS guys, right? Like everything was exits are here, like very security, like basically they had their security glasses on, right? I'm like, okay, now go in there and look at it. Like, watch this individual, right? One of your, I go and look at what they look for. And you'll notice there is a stark difference. Like, hey, man, you're going back to cognitive load. It takes almost no bandwidth for you because you've done it so many times to be like, there's the kitchen. That's going to be, you know what I mean? Threats, this and that. Like, that doesn't take any bandwidth. Like, you have the reps to do that. Like, what do the locks look like? Where is there a skiff presence? How are they? Are there thumb drives laying around? Are they security like, put the collector glasses on. In other words, like, if I walk into a room with an electrician, the electrician is going to see a different movie than me.
100% right.
Right? Does that make sense?
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
And so it was very, very interesting to kind of cross-pollinate and kind of show those guys that, hey, like, going back to that cognitive load, like, utilize your reps. You're gonna that's second nature stuff. Focus on the things that you're not used to focusing on, because that's going to take more bandwidth and more reps and more practice, right? So it's super interesting, and obviously you saw a lot of light bulb moments. Like in other words, hey, go in and do it again now that we've talked, and man, there would be a distinct difference in what they came back with as far as what they were paying attention to.
When I was teaching surveillance detection. It's kind of funny because in The Godfather, if you remember, they're driving and they think they're being followed by the cops, and they dig a U-turn on the bridge, and any meth head in like bumblefuck Indiana can run an SDR, right? Like, just go fast and see if they follow, right? But being able to manipulate your surveillance, and trying to teach former mill guys how to be a little bit more delicate and think. Like you're saying, I'm not trying to find out if I have surveillance. I mean, yes, I am. But I'm not going to do it by making them expose themselves. What I'm going to do is, from their mindset, they're like, the best thing you can do overseas is, if you have surveillance, is to act super fucking chill, right? And just be that political officer who's going out and getting his dry cleaning and grabbing a quick bite and then running over and coming home, because then they don't want to follow you anymore. They're going to look for somebody who's going operational.
Yeah, this guy's boring as fuck.
Right. And so you want to lull them through it, but you do it from the eye of the detector, of the person following you, to be like, hey, listen, this guy's boring, right? He didn't. That's why I was saying on the subway, knowing that I was going to go right meant that if I knew that the escalator was on the right, and let's say, and especially when you go down into the hole for some of these big cities, if you go like in New York, luckily they just change it. So they tell you which direction like the streets are, but some of you don't know. So like if you want to get off on 3rd or you want to get on 7th Avenue, it's different exits. And if you go up to the 7th and you actually had to go on 3rd and you walk back, that's provocative.
Right. That's alerting behavior.
Right. So what you want to do is just be like, hey, listen, I didn't give this guy any reason to think I was doing anything, even though what I was doing is totally normal. And the average person getting out of that subway is going to make a mistake. I don't make mistakes. And they see no mistakes as, well, he didn't look at me. Because when I turn and look left, that guy's like, he fucking made me. You know what? Son of a bitch. He waited till the end. No, just be that perfect person that is so boring that you're the guy with a 20-sided die and plays Dungeons and Dragons, right? Like you're not an operator operating overseas.
Well, having your experiences in the extensive amount of travel and working some very, very interesting places, like say we got Afghanistan, Pakistan, Turkey, Jordan, West Africa. What piece of advice or what would you say if I was a young aspiring case officer wanting to be one, or you are one? Wanting to be one. What would you tell me? What is, after all your experience, what's the best advice you could give me before I embarked on the path, as we like to call it, right?
You need to want to learn. If you are not somebody who wants to learn, you will not do well. And what I mean by that is, my old man told me that grades were important, not because A's meant that I was smart. Like you had said, like the movie said, you're going to be good at whatever you're good at, right? If I got A's across the board, that showed that an employer that I was doing something that I was not good at, and I grinded the fuck hard to do it. And I beat people who are naturally good at it, right? And so if you're someone, I would say, learn a new trade of something. Do it yourself the first time before you call somebody. If you're that kind of person, work on that. If you're not, work harder. But being an intelligence officer means that you need to meet people where they are. And you have to have an understanding of who they are, right? I told you when I was in language for Pashto does not have an active voice. Active voice, for all the people that aren't familiar with language, active voice means that you have taken action. Like, I punched you. Right? There's culpability to that. I own the action. Passive voice is what 5-year-olds do. When you come home and there's a lamp on the ground and it's broken and there's a kid standing right next to it and you ask them, like, what happened? The lamp fell.
Yeah. I broke it.
Not I broke it. Right? And so it was so hard when I came in late to class. And I go, I'm sorry I'm late. And I said that in Pashto. And you would have thought I was speaking Russian. Now, I didn't speak very good Pashto, but I probably shouldn't make a Russian comment with Afghanistan, but that's neither here nor there. They didn't understand it. And I go, in English, please. And I go, I'm sorry I'm late. And they go, Chester, you can't be late. You can't embody it. Late is a concept.
Right.
And I was like, holy shit. And I didn't fight it. I was like, all right, so I told you, like, Zamata Paklori Tasawowaha is how you say, by my gun, you've become shot.
Right, yeah.
Because there's no way to say, I shot you. You're not a gun. Bullets did not leave my body and enter yours.
Right, it's crazy.
And so it took me a little bit, but that made me a more effective case officer because I learned something that was so foreign to me of accountability and taking ownership and being like, you will be here at 8 a.m. Inshallah, I will. Right?
Yeah.
Oh, well, no, I don't know. Like, maybe I will if God willing. No. Trust me, I know where you live. If you leave at 7, you'll get here at 8. Well, inshallah, I'll leave at 7, right? And so if you meet the people where they are and you learn enough about them so that you can learn one thing. A line I use for a lot of people is like, if you learn one thing about everything, you know everything.
Oh, right, yeah.
Right? So it's like, learn about Maspahin. right? Learn about the different prayers. When you see somebody that has like a slightly darker forehead, know that makes them very religious because you get it from touching your head to the rug so often, right?
Yeah, sure.
And it creates a slightly callous. So learning that, and that starts in college or in high school, of being thirsty for knowledge and just wanting to know more.
Well, right, that's right.
And not for any other sake than knowing it, right? Mm-hmm. And the other one I would say is come to the job knowing what it is. It is not the movies. It is so much writing and learning and communicating. And I really, as an attorney, I had to learn it, right? And now running a company and sending out emails, it sounds so stupid. But when I was overseas, I was known by my writing, right? You don't have Zoom calls. You're out in the field. You send a cable back, encrypted, and that's all you have. Your Hall file, your Hall file is predicated on how you communicate, and that is through the written word. So I would make sure that everyone understands that words have meaning, and learning a way and you don't have to be this a-hole about it, but like I remember writing a cable, and I used the word sanguine. And S-A-N-G-U-I-N-E. And I'm like, it's developing, but I'm not sanguine about it. Mm-hmm. And the guy goes, you just say optimistic. I'm like, but that's not exactly what I'm trying to communicate. Sanguine means that it's not about optimism because there's not hope there. It's that there seems to be something that's in the way, and I think it's going to be detrimental to the overall structure. That's completely separate than optimistic. So I would say that knowing your words and knowing how to communicate and coming to the job knowing that you're not going to be fast roping out of helicopters. If you want that, join the Marine Corps. They're real good at it, right?
Yeah.
But if you want to know that you're going to have to meet people and talk to people and get to know them and not make it about you, and that way you can manipulate them and get in their head. Because remember, everyone you're recruiting in a foreign country at some point was a patriot. And that's why they got into government service. Unless you're in some countries and it's kind of it's a family business kind of thing, right? Mm-hmm. But you've got to know that when you meet people, it's got to be about them. And make sure that when people are talking, and you do this better than most people I know, when I'm talking to you, the sun is shining on me, right? When you talk to me, I know that you're not thinking about anything else except what I'm saying and how you want to come back and talk to me about it and show interest in me. And that kind of one-on-one, and I'm scared about that with all the phones and the fact that when I grew up, if I wanted to go on a date with a girl, I had to call her house and talk to her dad first before she picked up, right? And now you can text and you can be impersonal. You can take 8 minutes and you can really think about the best thing. No, you got to think on your feet, and the only way we can do that is knowledge and understanding and some sort of cultural sensibility.
Yeah, it's fascinating, dude. I've always been super, like I said, super impressed. The more I got integrated into the cohabitation other than just operationally, right? Because like I said, I would wear those guys out with questions, and very, very fascinating and very, very impressive, right?
Oh, shucks.
But you know what I mean? Literally, it's like, hey, man, that is, it is an impressive amount of data retention. Like you said, what you guys have to do, guys and gals, it's no light lift, right? It's no light lift at all. Well, geez, God, man, I mean, where are we at here? Where can people find, if they want to look you up, where can people find information about your company and you particularly?
Well, we're currently kind of running in stealth mode right now. Okay. So Modular Labs, we've got a website, but you can find me on LinkedIn, Chet Nielsen. The spelling will be in the video. And you can also find me on, we'll keep it at LinkedIn, keep it professional.
Badass.
That'd be great.
Thank you so much, brother. I really, really enjoyed this. I appreciate it. And I am really looking forward to this weekend.
I appreciate it.
All right, man. You got anything else? Anybody you want to shout out to?
No, but Caroline, thank you for watching the kids this weekend so I can spend some time with my friends. You're the best. I love you.
I second that. Yeah. All right, guys. All right, we'll get out of here. I'll let you get on the road, and then we'll link up tomorrow.
Sounds like a plan, brother.
All right, brother. Thank you. Hey, you guys, stay mobile. See ya.